Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and begin. Every public body shall give notice of the date, time, and location of its meetings other than special, emergency, or continued meetings at least 3 working days in advance by posting such notice on its official public government website, if any, placing such notice in a prominent public location at which notices are regularly posted, and placing such notice at the office of the clerk of the public body, or in the case of a public body that has no clerk, at the office of the chief administrator. Reasonable notice under the circumstances of a special, emergency, or continued meeting shall be given contemporaneously with the notice provided to the members of the policy body conducting the meeting. Mrs. Tanner, has today's school board meeting been properly certified?
Yes, Madam Chair. On February 5th, 2020, notice was provided fulfilling all criteria of VA Code Chapter 37.
Wonderful. I call this meeting to order. Proceeding on, we will begin with the roll call, item 1.03.
Basine?
Here.
Hanson?
Here.
Lincoln?
Present.
Smith?
Here.
Martin?
I believe she is on her way.
Here.
Jordan? Okay. Gabriel?
Present. Thank you. First, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the principal, Dr. Gibson, and the staff of Granby High School for hosting us today. We wish to thank them. And thank you also to our audiovisual crew for coming out today to allow this meeting to be televised so that members of our community can tune in with us. And I'd also like to congratulate Dr. Birdsong again. Yesterday was the swearing-in ceremony. Today is your first, I guess, official meeting now as Superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools.
Thank you.
Very happy. It was a beautiful ceremony. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and get started with our work session today. The first item on the agenda under Business and Finance will be the Superintendent's proposed budget. Dr. Birdsong.
Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Clinton, members of the board, our community. If you will recall, during the last business meeting, I provided information to you about my proposed budget for the 2020-2021 school year. It contained lots of information about additional positions, professional development, and all of the things that we feel that we need to move forward next year and really support our students, teachers, and staff. So at this time, I will ask Ms. Ingram to come forward. She will support the presentation as well as Mr. Hazelett. John Hazelett will support the ending part of the presentation dealing with the CIP budget. And so just to give you some additional information, just to kind of tell you how we plan to present today. Again, we thoroughly reviewed the proposal with you, or reviewed it on during the business meeting. Mrs. Ingram has some updated information that she would like to share with you related to comparisons of the governor's proposed Senate's and House budget. So she had some updated information to give to you in that regard. Certainly, we will answer your questions to the best of our ability, and then Mr. Hazelett will certainly join us and give us an overview of the CIP. So, again, we did not add any additional slides to the presentation that you received in February, so you do have that presentation that we can refer to as needed. Certainly, it included your goals and priorities, as well as the budget process with pertinent dates that we will adhere to. And then there was some information on student enrollment projections, as well as estimated revenue sources, and the priorities that will be supported within this proposed budget. And again, I'd like to just bring to your attention the 4 areas of priority for me as I was developing the budget with the team. Those 4 priorities include compensation, safety and security, additional resources for schools, and building maintenance and repairs. So also, I'd like to bring to your attention, Mrs. Tanner provided to you a packet of additional information. Many of you requested some additional reports, and so we wanted to provide that information to you this afternoon. You should have in your packets a letter from me that I provided to you in February. I did want to bring to your attention that there were two changes or updates to that letter that I wanted to bring to your attention. Initially, on the letter on the first page, where it has $2,030,684 for window and door replacements. It initially said Northside Middle School. That was an error. That was for the Lake Taylor School. So that was one correction. And then also, and this isn't a correction, there was something else on here. Yes, $163,158 for interior ceiling system repairs. A school was not named there, but that is for Little Creek Elementary School. So I did want to bring that to your attention. Additionally, in keeping with what we promised each other during our most recent governance training, not to get multiple copies of reports, there was, again, minor revisions that were made to the proposed capital improvement plan budget, which goes along with the letter. The two changes that I just shared with you are the changes that were made to that PowerPoint presentation. Again, omitting Northside Middle School and adding the Lake Taylor School there, and then adding on the additional information for the ceiling systems. And then you should also have a comparison of part-time hourly rates. I think that will help you in looking at the reasons that we are requesting an increase in part-time hourly rates. This, and Mr. Billups will go into more in-depth with this report. It provides comparisons with other surrounding school divisions to include Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Suffolk, Newport News, and Virginia Beach, as well as salary schedule history from 2017 until next school year. Of course, that would be the proposed budget, and the explanation behind why we have proposed to increase the first-year teacher salary, and really looking at if our teachers will really have a raise, because I think that was really the question, with giving them a step, will they really be able to have a raise? So Mr. Billups is prepared to provide all of that information to you. And then finally, in your packets, there is a chart about current staffing by location and funding source. Again, this is just to give you the overall context of where reading and math specialists, for example, where they're assigned right now, school nurses, attendance technicians, school security officers, and some other positions that were of interest. And again, Mr. Billups will give a more thorough explanation about that. So, Mrs. Ingram, if you want to go ahead and proceed with the comparisons, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Dr. Burson, and good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel and school board members. What I want to do with you is just to share the comparison between the governor's introduced budget, the Senate version, and the House version. The budget that Dr. Burson presented to you was based on the governor's introduced budget. So the first item on the chart is compensation. The governor did not have, and let me go back. This is in comparison for the FY 2021 school year. I did not use the comparison for the second year of the biennium. And these are the major changes for the current budget that you have before you in comparison. So under compensation, the governor did not have any increase for 2021. In the Senate version, there really was not a compensation increase. However, they did have a one-time bonus of a 3% increase effective December 1 of 2020. The House version had a 2% effective July 1 of 2020. For the at-risk calculations in the governor's budget, there was an increase in the add-on range for a maximum of going from 16% to 23%. In the Senate version, they had the same as the governor's, and in the House version, they were increasing the range from 16% to 24%, up 1% from what the governor had. The Games of Skills revenue line item, which was a new funding source that was in the governor's introduced budget. Both the House and the Senate eliminated that funding source, but what they did is they redirected to other areas, and I'll go over that later on in the presentation. Under supplemental lottery, the total lottery proceeds that was in the governor's budget was projected to go down. Keep in mind, because of the Games of Skills, there were talk of that decreasing the lottery funds. What's in the Senate version, they were projected to increase, and they were putting some of that money towards a new line item called School Construction Grant Program. In that program, there's a base of $100,000 for each school district, and then there is a per pupil amount for your March ADM from the previous year. So whatever, if this goes through, whatever our March ADM is for this school year, there's a per pupil amount that they would calculate to add to the $100,000. On the House version, the projected increase in the lottery funds would go to increase in the lottery supplemental per pupil amount. Staffing ratio change for ESL, English as a Second Language. In the governor's budget, they were proposing increasing 17 per 1,000 teacher to students to 20 teachers per 1,000 students. The Senate budget contained the same amount, could go to 20 per 1,000. In the House version, they were proposing to increase it from 17 per 1,000 to 18.5 per 1,000, which is a little less than what the governor had in his budget. If we look at all of the total changes between what the governor's introduced and what the Senate proposed, we should be receiving an additional $1.9 million, and based on the House version, it will be an additional $2.8 million. Now, the General Assembly, they're anticipated to adjourn Saturday, so if they come to agreement, we hopefully will be getting some information as to what was passed out of General Assembly's budget, and then we'll be able to do those calculations as well. So basically, I think this is the first time in quite some time that I've seen that the House and Senate both have projected increases over what the governor's initially introduced. So that's it in a concise comparison.
Okay, Ms. Campson?
$100,000 for school construction?
That was
Building for $100,000, a playhouse?
No, that's the minimal amount. Every school district will get $100,000. On top of that, there is a per pupil amount per March ADM. For us, it's proposed to get $485,000 in the state construction, if it goes through.
And so when that comes, is that something we can put into a lockbox and add to when we actually have to build a school, which was going to cost us tens of millions of dollars?
I don't know whether they would put it towards, let you carry it over, but if it goes into school construction, it'll be those one-time expenditures for repairs and maintenance as well. It doesn't have to be for building a school.
Oh, so like a roof or a HVAC system? Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Klein?
Ms. Ingram, you mentioned the game of skills and that the governor had made his proposal, and those are those, I guess, the games that are at the 7-Elevens, right?
Right.
But both the Senate and the House moved to eliminate them, and you made reference that they replaced them other locations. Could you elaborate on that?
For instance, the game of skills, the money that would have been from that, one of them redirected funds into the school construction fund. Let me go back to here. Also, on the House version, they increased the lottery per pupil amount. So they just used it in a different line item.
Okay.
But the funding pretty much stayed there. It was redirected.
Great, thank you.
All right. Okay. Mr. Jordan?
A couple of questions. First, on the compensation piece. So can you remind me what the proposal is, what budget the proposal is using in terms of the revenue projections from the state?
We're using the governor-introduced budget, which he did not have any funding for salary increases. So all of the salary increases are basically going to be funded with local funds or other savings and so forth. But there were no money dedicated for salaries in the governor's proposed for the first year of the biennium.
And I thought I saw a reference dealing with the 12% increase associated with benefits, that there was some reference that that took effect in December of, last December.
This coming December. See, the way the way our insurances are, and we charge them to the employee, the new rates will go into effect in December of 2020 for the 2021 school year, because we're on a calendar year basis for health insurance.
So let me see if I find it, I'll come back to it. So if there is a reference, so in the, if there is a reference to 12% from 2019, that would have been incorrect. It's 2020. I know on one slide it says effective December 2020.
It is effective December 2020, but December 2020 is in the fiscal year 21.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
And because our insurance is on a calendar year basis, it'll be effective with January 1 of 2021. And we start deductions in December for January.
So can I just one other follow-up? So when you're referencing the compensation being tied to the local funds, so what we are doing is, based upon what the funding formula and what we're anticipating from City Council, the positions that we are recommending being added, all those will be locally funded positions?
Some of the positions, like I think there are a position in the budget for guidance counselors because of the change in SOQ, those positions will be getting the state share of those additional positions. Typically, in your basic aid, where most of your staffing is done, there is a calculation of how many positions that they will fund. So in this instance, what the state typically do, if they want to fund a salary increase, they give you a different funding revenue line. So in this case, yes, they did not provide any salary monies for 2021 school year, and that's correct. Any positions that is above SOQ will be totally state funded. Just like now, most districts have more positions than funded with SOQ. So any additional positions that we add that are higher than the SOQ requirements will be funded with local dollars.
Do we want to move on to the next portion of the presentation?
Is there other questions for Ms. Ingram? Thank you, Ms. Ingram. Mr. Phillips, if you don't mind coming forward. And again, questions about how our beginning teacher salary is in looking at other school divisions where we stand, and also looking at the pay increases for teachers and what that looks like. And so the reports that you received today, that information is provided there, and Mr. Billups will walk us through those reports.
Okay, school board members, good evening. On the first report, which talks about the teacher salary scales on a 10-month contract with a bachelor's degree, that's a report I'd like to refer you to. On this report, what you see are the current salary schedules for our neighboring school divisions. And what you will notice is that of the 7 school divisions, currently Norfolk Public Schools is in the 6th position. So we're basically at the bottom. And so in the past 2 or 3 years, we've been increasing the percentage between the steps, with the goal being having a 2% between the steps. You'll notice that for 2021, we're proposing to increase the starting teacher pay because of what I just stated, that we are behind all of our other neighboring school divisions. One thing about the proposal that we've put in place here is that our percentage between the steps looks cleaner and more consistent when compared to the other school divisions. And that's important to note because it presents a more systematic and a more transparent approach towards fixing compression. So as you know, we've been talking about compression for a number of years. By us establishing a 2% increase between each of our steps, again, makes it more evident that we are trying to attack that problem as well, and it's easier to explain than maybe some of our other school divisions. If you look at their percentages and their, between steps, it looks more random. So the proposal is to have the starting pay for us to be increased this year, as well as to have a percentage increase in between each step, thereby accomplishing a step increase and a percentage increase as well.
So then, Mr. Phillips, for the column in red with the FY 2021 proposed employee raises,
Yes,
these are the percentages of the raises that teachers will receive depending on what step they fall on, because they will be given an additional step with this proposed budget.
yes. So for example, if you look at, let's use a step 2, a current teacher that's currently on step 2. If you look at, currently that teacher is at a salary of $44,773. For next year, that teacher would be at a salary of $46,132. That represents a 1.8% increase of the starting pay for a teacher. So by us increasing the starting pay, that's a 1.8% increase right there. But then a person on step 3, that teacher would have also realized a 1.25% increase over top of that step increase, thereby realizing a total percentage increase of 3.04%, or dollar value $1,359.
Ms. Basine, you have a question?
Mr. Phillips, I appreciate the information that you've provided to us so that we could see holistically where we fall. My questions, that I had asked are related, were these, as well as in 2016 when we did the pay and comp study. If you remember, there were several that were, they found several categories of teachers that were above expected, several steps above where they were expected to be, and several that were below. Do you have are we, for instance, one of the graphs showed that we had some that were 16 plus steps below expected. Are we shortening that gap? And if so, is there a way for us at some point to be able to see that information so that we can see how this pay and comp, as we're nearing the end of the phase, the different phases that we've agreed to implement, is there a way that we could get an updated analysis of that to see how we're closing those gaps for those that are either well above where they should be or below? Because there was like 74%, I think, that were below expected. And so we'd like to, I think it'd be good for us to see that, are we catching up or closing that gap so that people are where they should be?
Yes, well, certainly we can do that additional research, but the example that you're specifically citing, when it says the 74%, I believe that was for those teachers who didn't have a degree.
Right.
And the way that is the reason why that presents that way is because in 2016, 2017, that number represented nurses as well as some individuals who are in technical professional types of teaching positions. And so when it says no degree, in 2016, 2017, when that study was done, there was not a requirement that our nurses have a bachelor's degree. The requirement was that they be an RN, but not necessarily have a bachelor's degree, because a bachelor's degree is not required to be an RN. Now, We've since changed that and placed a bachelor's degree requirement in our requirements. So the figure that you're referencing from the 2016-2017 study, I believe it was 26 people, 26 nurses of, I think our total complement at that time may have been 50-something. So 26 of them did not have a degree. That's why they fell out into that category, because our nurses are on our teachers' salary schedule. So those 26 people fell in there, as well as I believe at that time it was 9 other individuals who fell in that category, who are in the technical professional teaching categories. These may be people who, they don't have a college degree, but they have certifications and years of experience, such as maybe the plumbing teacher or the electronic teacher, which we all know those are highly in demand skills. And if they've been working 15 or 20 years, in order for us to have even secured them as a teacher, then we had to have a competitive salary. So for that reason, at that time, that represented, I think, 35 people who fell into that category, whose salaries may appear higher, because again, the nurses, you have a nurse that's maybe been a nurse for 20 years or more and then came here to work. In order for us to get her with that many years of experience, then it had to be reflected in her salary. But that's why those are in that category. Others, certainly, now that we're 4 years out from the study, then certainly we could be able to go back and see, historically, what's actually happened as a result of the implementation of the previous 3 phases.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, but then if you look at those with bachelor's, master's plus 30, there are greater than 70%, and I'm just saying greater than 70% that are below expected. So, I think it'd be good for us to see, are we catching up as we're, doing these types of analyses? Like, are we, I know it might be, I recall it being quite expensive, and costly to get everybody on the correct, I believe it was like 25 million at that
Right.
time, if we were to put everybody on the
Yes.
correct step, which is why we did this phase-in, but I think it'd be good for us to see, okay, where are we closing that gap? But anyway, I appreciate you providing
Certainly.
this to us.
Okay, we'll do Mr. Jordan and then Ms. Smith.
Yield if she wants to go.
And thank you for the information, it's very detailed, and I'm not sure, Dr. Birdsong, if this question is for you or Mr. Phillips, but can you share with us the link between salaries and teacher retention? As I look at this, I see that the first 5 steps, we are somewhat below the district as a whole, but as you get further up into our scale, the salaries far surpass quite a few of the other schools, other than Portsmouth, who seems to be a little higher than what we have. And don't mistake my question for being against the increase. I am totally in favor of the increase, but I'd like to know if there is some type of connection between salaries and retention.
And I think Mr. Billups will be better equipped to answer that. But I would say generally, we have a young teacher corps, and right now, because we are number 6 out of 7 school divisions as it relates to beginning teacher salary, I think it will negatively impact our ability to secure teachers for our school. For our schools. I can say that just being in the district for quite some time. So I do know it impacts our ability to attract teachers to this area. And I think Ms. Basine made the point about, in terms of, longevity. We do, the longer that the teachers are here, the higher their compensation is compared to other school divisions. So I would say definitely, it does impact that. It definitely does. And I think that's one reason why we heard a couple of teachers over the past couple of months talk about, we understand the need to, raise the beginning teacher pay, but what about the teacher who has been here for 15, 16, 17 years? We certainly agree with that. And I think one issue that may have impacted us long-term is that while we gave increases over the years, we may have given a 2% cost of living adjustment for years, but we didn't do a step increase. And I think we could have done that, especially if we're looking at some of the between steps, like a 1.25% difference from step to step. And so maybe had we not done that, it could have made a difference right now, and more people could have been on the correct step. But it is going to take a lot of funding to be able to do that.
Okay, because I see this more geared towards recruitment,
Yes.
but not so much as retention.
And I hear you with that, but if you look to Ms. Smith, if you look at the step increases, the amount in between steps, and then look at the total proposed amount, it is greater. So we
Yes.
are, not only are we, looking at the beginning teacher salaries, all of our teachers will get a raise. And that was the goal. So it's not just the beginning teachers, but all of the teachers will in fact get a raise. If they qualify for a raise, meaning they're not on a plan of action, that kind of thing, if they're eligible to receive a raise.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Jordan?
So I want to go back and piggyback a little bit on Ms. Basine. So I'm having difficulty comparing apples to apples. So first on the starting teacher salary. So when the pay and comp study was done, and they used this teacher-weighted average salary comparison. And as I recall it at that time, it involved looking at how various school divisions were doing different things with steps and one-to-one and all these things that are far outside my scope of depth. But in looking at the chart at that time, when you looked at the teacher-weighted average salary comparison, Norfolk was number one in terms of that weighted average salary comparison. And now when we had similar charts back then. So I'm just trying to get a sense of one, how to compare where we started with the pay and comp and the data that we had then, excuse me, where we are now, and then where the proposal gets us to. So is it still the case from your assessment that if we were to use the same teacher-weighted average salary comparison that was done before, where would Norfolk fall? Because I can remember being in a conversation with a school board member in Virginia Beach when we were first doing this, and he had said to me he was afraid that our work that we were doing would cause people to realize that there are these other benefits and factors in there that actually sees that the total value of what Norfolk was providing into compensation was actually greater than what some of the neighboring districts. So did you get a chance to do any update using this teacher-weighted average salary comparison to see where we fall today versus where we were 4 years ago?
No, as of this point, I can't say that we have done any of the teacher-weighted average. That we would have to go back and take a look at that from 4 years ago and try to see, what would that look like today, because we didn't do that. I think that the main thing, as Dr. Birdsong spoke of, is that really hurt us, is that when we looked historically, that there were a number of years here in Norfolk Public Schools where percentage increases were being given, but it wasn't affecting the step. And so the steps were not moving. And then there were also a number of years in which there were no increases actually being given. And we know that step increases are very important to teachers because that's in their minds how they see an increase. And although percentage increases were being given here, it basically contributed to the compression and the feeling of folks that were they really getting a raise per se. So that's contributed to that.
So I agree with that, but my recollection was that was the point of the study, that the reason that we embarked upon the studies because we knew we had this compression, hadn't given raises in a while. And that the purpose of the study and the 4-year phase-in was to get actual employees on the right step. So when we're talking about the lack of increase and the lack of step adjustment, that would have been prior to 2016.
Right.
What I'm trying to get a sense of is not just on a chart, but actual staff employees where they are today, as we've been phasing this in, at least theoretically, over the last 3 years. Where are we today? And then how does the recommendation close us out or push us forward? Because we just guesstimated it might take 4 years to phase in. We knew at the time it could be more just based upon other factors that we don't have any control over. So I'm just asking to get some real sense of where our current employees are based upon the work that we've done, so that in our discussions, we may end up asking for more resources, so that not only can we provide the raises that you described, but also make sure that we have actually helped our employees to get on the right step, and especially those who are in the middle. I mean, I know about the early folks, but we had veteran teachers and staff people who were stuck in the middle, and I think that's what Ms. Basine was referencing. Have we helped them yet or not is to me the real question.
And I hate to put her on the spot, but Ms. Tao may be able, because she's looking at the numbers constantly. Ms. Tao, do you mind coming to the podium, please? And I do apologize, but she's always prepared. As you've looked at the numbers over the years in addressing Mr. Jordan's question about where are we now, do you have a sense of where we are now in terms of maybe the percentage of teachers that are now on the proper step versus those that are not, and what would be the total cost in making that adjustment?
I didn't get a chance to review it. However, since the first phase of the study, we always gave teachers a step increase.
Correct.
However, we have to go back where we have like at least 5 or 7 years where we did not move up a step.
Right.
Right.
So I don't have I can
Okay.
work on that.
Okay, I didn't know if you had a sense for where we might be. I know we talked about, like, overall, how much that would cost, like 25 million.
Yeah, 25 million.
And able to make that adjustment.
Um,
And two, Ms. Tao, remind the board, when you embarked upon this work years ago with the pay and comp study, the work around looking at placing everyone on the right step.
Yeah, and that means we need actually manpower to touch every record of the teachers. Because even just looking munis, we cannot just say, oh, they need to be on step 20, when actually we have to go check the records whether was that really teaching experience. And that means looking at it one by one and put them where they should be. And from there, that's the only way I can calculate it.
Right.
I was debating of giving teachers 2 steps, but then that's going to cost a lot of money. That's why I just stick to 1 step increase this year. But yeah, I have to go back and look at every record in order to even have an idea how to put teachers.
Right, and so let's talk about how realistic that might be with, can we talk about that? What would be needed in order to do that work? To look at,
Well,
what,
what I can
3,000, almost 3,000 teachers,
Yeah,
2,700,
historically,
2,800?
that did come up during
Okay.
the study with Siegel Waters, because that was a consideration. But it was determined that because of not just what we're saying here about having to literally go in and try to find every teacher's record, piece it together, and try to come up with what the step would be, but then just trying to rely upon that information that had gotten old at that time and trying to work with that, and then trying to have the manpower. So that's why a decision was then made, okay, we have to level the playing field at some point, so we will make sure that everyone gets an increase in such a way that they don't lose any money. And that was the main thing. Everyone received increases such that they would not lose any money, and then they were placed on a step accordingly, so as the phases of the study continued, they would continue to grow, but always knowing that there was no way to guarantee that the step that you were on was equated to teaching years. And that has always been communicated to all of our teachers in such a way also that we tried to get them to understand that this is the way that Norfolk did it. You didn't lose any money. If you were to go to another school division and seek employment there, they're going to place you on their step in accordance with your number of teaching years. So say you had verifiable 10 years of teaching experience and you went to Virginia Beach, then Virginia Beach is going to place you on where their scale is for 10 years. So we tried to get teachers to understand that as long as your years of verifiable experience is verifiable, you're not losing anything if you were to go somewhere else, and you are placed on a step within our school division such that you saw a growth at that first phase and you didn't lose any money. And then we also would be able to show you, again, what we've just talked about, the years in which the percentage increases were given, say 2%, and then those years when there were no percentages given.
Another example, I've looked at other school divisions' presentation where they did a comparison among the various divisions for what are teachers making first year, 5, 10, 15, 25, and 30. I was looking at the 30 years. Other school divisions that are on step 30, I'm assuming they have 30 years of experience, it equates to step 22 for us. So if we have to put them step 30, those teachers that are currently on step 22, we have to move them to step 30, that's like 8 steps.
So what I'd like to do is, when we embarked on this study in 2016, it was a direct response to concern that we were hearing from our staff. And we wanted to address, first, have data to inform our decisions, and then for the past several years, we've been able to address that through the step increases and additionally through the benefits package that they receive, because we always try to hold harmless the benefits package. And I know that over the years we've had to do some sharing, but that is a big piece of compensation. Now that we are coming on the last year of this study, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and complete this year with the recommendations that you have proposed to us, Dr. Birdsong, and then think about what are the next steps that we have to do in order to identify some of those particular groups of staff members who have been significantly impacted by the compression. And again, that would go back to our data that is informing us about teacher retention, and where we need to have particular staffing needs. So Dr. Birdsong, I'm not sure how you feel about that, but that might be something for us to think about as we plan for next year.
Certainly, we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Absolutely, and provide.
I'm going to take a
Today.
question from Ms. Campson then, and then we'll transition to the next portion of the presentation. Mm-hmm.
I know that we need to front-load our salaries more, because we're looking, even with, and the increase there was very significant and very important, but we're still lagging. So if we, and that was always the thing that got a lot of stuff going, was the fact that we need to front-load more.
Right.
So if we front-load, make a commitment, and as we plan next year, to start making a commitment to front-load to get that top one up, when we do that, and I guess I should probably be asking one of them, so if we say front-loaded and we go from 45 to 45.5, then does that now ripple all the
It
way
does.
up to all
Yes,
the
it
other
does.
steps, which was
Yes.
one of the problems
It
we had
does.
before, because we were front-loading, and that's where we got those people in the middle caught.
Right.
Was because we
Right.
front-loaded, but it didn't ripple up to them,
Right.
and so the people that were in the middle really got caught.
Right. You have to maintain that structural balance. If you increase that, the beginning pay, then you have to look at everything
Right,
else.
and ripple it down, which is
Right.
what we did not do in the past when they first started that front-loading, and
Which
those middle
contributed to
people
the
got caught.
compression.
Right.
And that's why I said
It
earlier.
was compressing this way.
What we're doing now is transparent and systematic to try to show that we're trying to fix that for everybody.
Are we also doing that with principal salaries? Because principal salaries were compressed before even the teachers started. They started with freezing steps and salaries for principals, as you know,
Right,
because we got caught in it.
right. You're right.
Would that be something,
So-
not for now, but could we look at that also in the
So
future?
we've looked at all employees. We've
Okay,
looked at
okay.
all employees, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because all employees are working hard, and so we've looked at everyone.
Okay.
And so before Mr. Billups leave, we do want to take a look at the information about current staffing by location and funding source. Because I know there was a question or just wanting to know where our current math specialists, reading specialists are placed, as well as guidance counselors and some other positions. And so before we have Mr. Billups and have a seat, do you have any questions about this? And again, looking at the reading and math specialists, we wanted to ensure that there was at least one full-time person in every building. And so that's where the recommendation from me came about adding 4 reading and 6 math specialists. And then, as you know, we don't have any school security officers at any of our elementary schools, with the exception of Jaycox. They do have a .5 a position, and so the budget includes the 28 additional positions, plus the 2 additional positions for Ghent and Crossroads, so that they can have a full-time position. So these 2 sheets provide you with information about current staffing and then the proposal moving forward.
Ms. Campson?
All right, so as we move forward with returning and restoring the reading and math specialist positions that we've had in the past at the elementary schools, I just want to make sure that we remember to now tie that into our Title I budget, so that we are using and layering that I always ask for, that I requested, that to ensure that all of our Title I schools that are not accredited are getting another reading and math specialist if needed, through the title money to build on the equity level.
Yeah, and please recall that that's the building principal's decision about
But-
how they want to staff.
Well, or we could redesign so that that was a decision that's made at central level, so that the little bit of penance money that the principals get, that basically will only give most of them one full-time position, instead those are taken right off top of the budget. And if we look at the Title I budget and reorganize it so to force that money where it belongs, into our high-poverty schools, instead of all these other places.
And we can have a presentation on that, so y'all can have more
I've
data
asked
around
for
that. But I will tell you that the CAB budget, and you should, you recall working on that,
I
is
did.
so small compared to the school level budgets. And so I'm just not sure if we could do that with the pot of funding for central
It would be
office.
something I'd like us to look at.
We can certainly do that.
Because certainly.
We can certainly do that.
It's where you focus your money. And to me, I mean, there was a time when those things were centrally done.
Right.
And they weren't something that a principal then had to pick, do I need a parent liaison more to work with our families, or do I need a reading specialist to work with my low literacy children? Because parent liaisons were provided and into the title schools. And so was extra reading. The first year my school became Title I, we got an instructional specialist, which is what I'd asked for the ESSA schools for next year. And those were not something that I had to try and figure out how to pay for. Those were provided at the central level. And so that would be something I'd like to look at.
Okay, we can take a look at.
Thank you.
Mr. Gordon?
So just for clarity then, because I've heard Ms. Campson say that, and what I'm trying to get an understanding of is the chart that we have, regardless of the funding source, title, local, state, whatever it is, these are our current allocations that we currently have. Is that correct?
That's right. This
Okay.
represents Yes, this represents 1920, fiscal
Okay.
year 20.
Okay.
And then on the last page, Mr. Jordan, in red, you'll see fiscal year 2021 proposed on the second sheet. You see that line
Oh,
at the very
I
bottom?
think ours is
Yes,
black and white,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we tried to highlight that in
Right.
red.
So I was asking about the funding source, more so just trying to understand sustainability.
Yes.
So I know in the past, whenever we've gone down this, I don't want to get
Absolutely.
caught in a
Yeah.
year-to-year cycle. So whatever the recommendations are, that based upon the budget and all these other things, that it's going to be something that's going to be sustained. And then the other piece of it is, and I think Ms. Campson just touched on it, and I agree with her in terms of trying to get as many extra resources as possible where it's needed. The other comment I just wanted to make, going back to Dr. Gabriel, where we left off with the salary increase, I would prefer that we know the circumstances of our current employees. I think the step increase and the percent increase is something that we've been doing. We did that last year. What's good about this year is we're getting to a higher number, a higher average than I think what we did last year. But the salary increase and the step increase is what we've been doing. What I think we still need to have a good sense of is exactly where our teachers are and our staff are, based upon the distribution and where they are in the steps. So for me, if the board is willing, before we just move forward and just vote on something, I think if we can get some level of apples to apples comparison, including that understanding of the weighted piece, because I still think that even as we are having these conversations about where we are division to division, we are not, unless things have changed from the fact that each school division was doing something different.
Right.
I just want to make sure we are indeed comparing apples to apples and are communicating effectively where our employees are, and for me particular, those that have been around, and 'cause I don't want to lose them in the,
And so, Mr. Jordan, I definitely appreciate your comments around that. However, I'll have to refer to Mr. Billups and Ms. Tao about the amount of time. I'm very concerned that, I'm just not certain how soon all of that can be put together, especially if they have to touch 3,000 records. So I have no idea how long that would take, Mr. Billups, so I'm going to need to lean on you for that expertise.
So it's the time is slipping away for us, and I know that we have other items that we want to get to. Is it possible then, Dr. Birdsong, for Mr. Billups to then come back to you about a time frame or resources needed in order to fulfill a request like that?
Yeah.
May I add another layer to that possibly? And it might be along the same lines as Mr. Jordan, I'm not certain. My concern with the FTEs is what we're looking at is allocations. And I do know last year we increased some specialists, math and reading specialists. But what we don't know is the status of those, as well as the allocations that are here as a total. Meaning, to what extent have we been able to fill these positions that we
like the
currently
vacancies.
have? And we're adding on to it, could our resources potentially be better used in a different way because we're not actually filling the FTEs that are allocated for certain positions?
And I definitely understand that, and with our focus on literacy, I just know that we, and based on our review of data, we certainly need more math and reading specialists, and I hear you about the vacancies. Is that not a part of the vacancy report that's provided monthly? And if not, then we can provide that
It's not
information to
expressed in
you.
that way.
Do you know, Mr. Billups, right off the top, how many vacancies we have in reading and math?
No, not right off the top
Okay,
of my head.
all right.
But do
All
you
right.
understand
I
what I'm
do.
saying?
I do.
we've increased this once, and I'm not opposed to
Yeah.
increasing it. I just want to make sure that when I say yes to
Yeah.
increasing something, we're not just creating a whole bunch of allocations that aren't being effectively utilized.
And so, as you know, and I'll cut it short, another proposal that we have is to implement a Grow Our Own program with reading and math specialists, and we're really gonna, we really need to do that. We were trying our very best to ask for what we need, and after discussing this with the executive leadership team and getting feedback from building principals, we know there's a need to have a reading and math specialist at our elementary level at every school. And so, maybe there's some other things that we need to do internally. I would hate for us not to ask to move forward in this area based upon us not thinking that we'll be able to fill the positions, because that's another conversation. What can we do internally to promote these positions so people will want to come here and, apply for that position, or even if they have the certification to serve in that role, what would motivate them to transfer from a classroom teacher to that position? So again, I think there are other things that we can do if you are concerned about vacancies.
Okay.
Then we can approach it from, here's the need, so based on the need, what do we need to do to make sure we get the staff here, to serve our kids?
Okay, so I'm going to grab a question from Mr. Clinton, and then we're going to
Actually, mine is
transition.
just a quick statement, just a reminder here, because based on what Ms. Ingram shared with us earlier, by this weekend, we'll know whether or not we could potentially have $2.8 million additional to add into this budget. And right now, we're based on just what the governor had given us. So hopefully, I don't think that we're going to lose anything, but I think that we'll probably gain something probably in the middle there. But strongly about the Grow Your Own, I think that that's a great motivator for individuals who are currently teaching with us, to give them opportunities to see where they can take on and stay within the district and take on additional roles. So I appreciate what's been presented to us, and particularly looking at and asking for what we need inside the schoolhouse. So
So let's
that's
go
what
ahead
we
and
did last time.
transition then to the
Okay.
next piece of the, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Billups.
Certainly.
Mr. Hazelat, if you don't mind coming to the podium, please. And so the next part of the presentation involves an overview of capital improvement projects or plan that we've discussed with the city, and now giving you a closer look at it. Mr. Hazelat.
Thank you, Dr. Birdsong. Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Clanton, members of the board. You have the copy of the listing. In 2017, Norfolk Public Schools contracted with HBA Architecture, as you know, to conduct a facility condition assessment of all but just a few of our schools. The work was conducted in the summer of 17, and the report was presented to the district in September of that year. That report provided scores for various building systems, such as roofs, windows, flooring, and mechanical systems. The report established 4 priorities of need, 1 through 4, to assist the district in establishing scheduled upgrades to our schools based on the life of that particular building system. We recently had the report updated by HBA to reflect work that has been done since 2017, as well as the increase in cost from inflation and just overall construction costs. So the CIP plan that you have before you is but a small portion of our priority 1 needs. And those priority 1 needs are items that are addressed that need to be addressed in the next 5 years. So our current priority 1 needs for the district, based on the updated report, is $157 million, a little over $157 million. Our consultants have told us over the years that Norfolk needs an estimated $16 million a year just to maintain our facilities. So since 2012, the district has been funded $30.8 million, or an average of $3.4 million per year. Quite obviously, we have a significant backlog of unfunded work, and catching up on that work is the challenge that we have today. With the development of our master facilities plan, we expect to identify opportunities to cut into that need by replacing schools and possibly closing or consolidating schools, other older facilities, thereby diverting those maintenance dollars to buildings that we will keep in the inventory. So to this list, all the projects listed are in the priority one list of the HBA report. They are in no priority order on the spreadsheet that you have. And again, this is 16 million of 157 million. So it's a bigger bite than what's been done in the past. This ask is a bigger ask, and so we hope to be able to move forward and get as many of these projects done as we possibly can. And I would say also that many of the projects that are listed are carryovers from the 2016-20 master project list that the board was given before. And as in the case, needs change during the year. Emergencies come up, things happen, and we have to be able to adjust on the fly. And that's what's been done over the past years, and I'm sure we'll have to continue to do that as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. We'll do Ms. Smith and then Ms. Campson.
Where are we with all of the renovations that were supposed to be made to Lake Taylor School?
Same question.
To Lake Taylor School at the beginning of the year when we decided, before they even opened, when we decided to consolidate them with Fairlawn.
Well, you'll notice that window and doors are listed in this CIP for Lake Taylor School. That's one item. The renovations, I'm assuming you're speaking to are the ones to support the children that are going in. As you know, the children will not, the K-3 students will not transition until year after next. So we are working now this year in developing the list of projects that will be done this summer. And then we'll have one more summer before those students actually move over from Fairlawn.
And the renovations for the group that is currently there, because there were some rooms, if I'm not mistaken, special education, some rooms in the back. We had a whole list of things.
All those items were done.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. All that work was done. The special ed classes were moved to the west end of the building over by the softball field. A new bus ramp was installed to be able to accommodate that, as well as other projects. And I have to tell you, I walked in on the end of that, so I'm not as familiar with all the details of that, but we'll be going forward.
So do I understand you to say that all of the renovations required at Lake Taylor for them to operate as they currently exist are completed?
That is my understanding, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the only renovations that are left is for the K-3 group to, when they move in?
That's correct. We walked the building with the principals probably 2 months ago, identifying, just in general conversation about what we need to do when the K-3 students come over. There's some bathrooms that need to be added on the first floor. We've identified where they need to be, where the kindergarten classes will be, as well as some other things in some of the large spaces that we think we can get better utilization.
And may we, Dr. Birdsong, get a timeline of those renovations as well as, that includes when we expect them to be implemented and all that, at some point, a presentation that
Yes, ma'am.
keeps us abreast of what's taking place at the school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
It is, speaking to that, if I may, Ms. Smith, it is our goal that before the end of the school year, or probably within the next couple of months, we'll have a complete list of all the work that needs to be done. We'll break it down by what's going to accomplish this summer and what'll be left for the following summer before the students come over.
Okay,
That's great.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm okay because she asked my question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clanton and Ms. Basine.
So just for clarity here, HBA did a study back in 2017. We've updated that with new information based on things that we've already done to give us this new scale.
That's correct.
Everything that we're being presented here in this budget is listed as a priority one.
They all are priority one.
Okay. Are there any additional priority ones that aren't listed up here?
The list is lengthy. Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay. So I'm just trying to, because.
These are the priorities, the
Because
priority
when the
one.
public sees this, and of course, it's the normal thing, well, I don't see my school.
Right.
And I just want individuals to understand that how we came up with this priority list here. And also, I think it was very important that you said that there is carryover here from 2016, 17, that we're still trying to address as well. So when we get asked why my school isn't here, and we have these issues that are there, and we know that individuals are in these buildings, the most important thing that I think that individuals in the community should take away is that this reflects almost a $13 million increase in our ask above the $3 million that we've been getting from the city, so that we can be more in line with what the consultants have told us that we need in order to maintain our buildings.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so to your point, the, obviously roofs are a top priority, building system. So you'll see several roofs here. Some of the ceiling systems have to do with asbestos. We always are trying to address asbestos abatement in the schools. So trying to cover as many schools and as many other priorities as we can. Roofs, obviously, as you can tell by this, they're big ticket items, and they will consume whatever money we get for capital improvements very quickly, and that still leaves a lot of other needs in the district that need to be addressed.
I think it was Ms. Basine, and then we'll do Mr. Jordan, then we'll come back
Yeah.
to you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, Christine asked one of my questions about Lake Taylor, but the other piece is, so has all of the work necessary at Sherwood Forest been done as well, related to, I know there were some issues with tiles and things like that.
All of the work that had been identified
Yeah.
that needed to be addressed has been addressed. Yes, ma'am.
Has been addressed, okay. Okay.
But you'll also see Sherwood Forest is on here as well.
Yeah, I
We know
see
that the
that,
building
yeah.
needs a roof. We know that it needs windows. Hence, and it's been on the list. And Sherwood Forest, at least the window replacement was on the old CIP list, the 5-year plan. So that's why you've got windows there that carried over to this year.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mr. Jordan?
So is it fair to say that maybe with the exception of the ceiling system, that when these repairs or upgrades are made to these schools then are going to have some period of time before they would be considered as part of any new consolidation, closure, or new construction?
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that being the case, then with Norfolk Technical Center, so then we are, I guess, based upon this, and I do understand that you're telling us this is a necessity, but we're in essence saying that by putting this investment in Norfolk Technical Center, we expect that building to be online for how long?
I honestly don't have an answer for that. NTC is a newer facility.
Right.
Comparatively speaking, and is in good shape, and we like to keep it that way for whatever the needs are going to be in the future.
Yeah.
No programmatic decisions have been made on anything related to changes in that building, though.
Okay.
Ms. Smith?
So I'm having a hard time crosswalking what transferred over from last year onto this one. Last year, I do recall lots of chillers that were on the list that needed repairing. Have we completed all those? I'm assuming we did because I don't see any of them here. And then when we were presented this the last year, there was something about excess revenue that was used and presented to council to say, we want to use this for one-time projects, and it was used for CIP one-time projects, and I'm not seeing the relationship this time. I don't,
Yeah, Rhonda, Ms. Ingram made
Yeah,
a
I'm gonna have to
presentation
have
about the, I know
Ms. Ingram to speak to that from last
the,
year.
the credits
Please.
and different.
and how
in the
it carries
chillers.
over and how we're using it to take care of current projects or prior projects, and then what's being added. So that we can just kind of see what's coming, what's being carried forward, what's being added on to, how the resources are being utilized for it.
I believe you're speaking to the year-end fund balance from 2018, the carryover dollars. Those funds were earmarked for two major projects. We carried over unused textbook funds and created a textbook fund so that when we get ready to do a textbook adoption, that we have additional funds. And the other portion went to pay for the FF&E of the 5 new PPEA schools. You know that we did not get sufficient funding from the city for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we transferred, I think, like $3.1 million to cover the shortfall in that. So it's not pertaining to this CIP,
Okay.
but it's the CIP for the 5 new schools.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ingram? Speak to your question about the chillers, I can't say definitively that they have all been fixed. There are a lot of them underway still to this time. Some of those have they changed priorities because conditions changed, and they needed to move up on the list because we had mechanical problems that we needed to deal with.
It would be nice to know, though, how far along we are with that, because we have older buildings, and having those in optimal condition, I mean, it impacts the quality of the environment
Absolutely
that
does.
everyone is in.
Okay. So all good questions. Dr. Birdsong, this is a hefty ask that we will be making to the city.
Yes, it is.
Do we feel confident that this might come to reality, or where are we in the conversation?
We are very hopeful.
Okay, that's wonderful,
We're
wonderful.
hopeful.
Okay, okay.
We're hopeful.
That's right.
Ask for what you
And
need.
and I'm glad that we're asking for it, because for so long, we, as Mr. Hazel has said, we have so much deferred maintenance with our buildings. And in order to maintain what we have, all of these investments will be necessary. So is there anything else that we need to include with this discussion for the CIP or for the budget discussion before we transition to our next topic? So then, what I'm going to ask is to save your questions, and if we have time at the end of all the presentations, we can come back to this, because I want to keep us on track, since we're already 15 minutes into the next portion of our agenda.
So can I just ask you a process question? Are we going to have a meeting next Wednesday? Because we haven't talked amongst ourselves. We've had some Q&A, but I'd like to have some discussion as a board in terms of what we will do in terms of the proposal that we submit.
Let's do this. We will come back to that before we transition into the public meeting for the budget. Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is 4.01, educational planning on the school start times.
Okay. Good afternoon again. So, this afternoon, Dr. Cataldo and Mr. Hazelette will lead our discussion around school start times. The areas of focus will be, as it has been, transportation, academics before and aftercare, and athletics. Those are the major areas. And so today, we hope to be able to address all of your questions and concerns around school start times. And so, Mr. Hazelette.
All right, I'll start off. Good afternoon again. Thank you, Dr. Birdsong, members of the board. I'd like to update you on our progress relative to changing school start times. Upon my return to the district in August, it was apparent that little had been done to assess the impact and make plans for this change. The one major area that drives these changes, no pun intended, is transportation. As we go through this presentation, you will see that transportation is a key component that is interconnected in every aspect of the process. I'm told that it was previously stated that making this change would provide efficiencies in transportation operation, and that's possible. I'm also told that it was previously stated that there would be savings by reducing the total number of drivers, thereby positively impacting our continued driver shortage challenge. That I cannot say with 100% certainty. What savings have been identified being derived through, that I will share with you today, have essentially been rolled into back into the operation to improve efficiency, by reducing ride times for students, in particular the citywide programs like Ghent, ADL, and the high school academies. No matter what, unless, this goes, no matter what bell time schedule the district has, unless we are able to recruit and retain enough school bus drivers, the challenges that we're facing today, getting students to and from school on time, is going to continue next year. That is just a fact. And we're working on steps to be able to address that, but it is the issue is not unique to Norfolk. It is a nationwide issue, and we're working very hard to try to address that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about transportation first. Talk about the stagger structure. There currently, as you know, there are essentially 4 staggers or 4 tiers: the high school, middle school, elementary 1, and elementary 2. Under the proposal of changing the times, we would be going to 3: elementary going first, middle schools, and then high schools. The 3 stagger system allows more time between the tiers, between the staggers, and that is most impactful in the afternoon. The afternoon has always been the biggest challenge because you've got the time starts when the bell rings. We've always tried to allocate 7 minutes to load buses so they could hit the road, and they have a limited amount of time in the afternoon, which is about 28 to 30 minutes to be able to load, transport students, get them home, and then get to their next school. It's very challenging. Under the 3-tier system, that time moves to like 38 to 53 minutes, in that range. The morning has always been a little bit easier because you have the breakfast cushion, the breakfast time when the buses come in early for that program, and it gives you a little bit of a buffer there. Also, currently, and even in the new plan, the longest elementary school run would be about 22 minutes. And I know we've talked about that from the standpoint of the elementary students being on the bus stop early in the mornings. Route simulation. Transportation uses a routing software called Versatrans, and within that feature, within that system is a feature called bell time study. And that allows the user to be able to perform a simulation or a what-if scenario. A simulation using this feature was conducted by the Department of Transportation along with representatives of Versatrans. The results, and just so you'll know the process of that, the results of that, they identify glitches in the system, if you will, where it'll kick a route out that will say this bus can't do this. It can't get there on time, knowing the routing system that's already in the system. And they're using current student information and current routing information because we don't know what it's going to be next year. Most of the routes, at least the regular transportation routes in Norfolk, except for the citywide programs, pretty much remain the same every year. The bus stops are about the same every single year. So some of the bigger issues will have to do with like at the end of the day in the afternoon, can that bus finish that last tier run and be able to get to an activity run or some special run at the end of the day. So this work was recently done, and all specifics have not all been fully vetted, as changes to academic and athletic program hours for special offering have not all been fully established. So there are aspects of this that we don't know what we don't know because there are so many moving parts to this. As it relates to bell times, as a part of our review, we determined that we may not end up with a true 3 stagger system. We may need to tweak some individual school bell times. And I'll give you an example. Ghent and ADL, for example, are both citywide programs. They both have the same bell times. Buses will transport students geographically. They'll pick them up in whether they go into the Willoughby area or go over to Compostela. A bus that's on, and I'm using those as the extremes of the city. Bus goes into that area, they're going to pick up children from both schools. And then that bus will then make 2 stops in the morning. Okay, they'll go to ADL, they'll go to Ghent. They've got the same times. They can't be in the same place at the same time. So obviously somebody's going to be late every day. Every day those children are going to be late to school. And then the same thing in the afternoon. They're going to dismiss. All the buses can't be at Ghent or ADL at the same time. So half of them they'll have to swap. They'll split them up, they load half, and then they swap. So then there is obviously they're going to get to school, one of the schools late. The schools are having to pay monitors to be able to look after the children until the buses get there. So the point of all that is to simply say that some schools may need to have their bell times tweaked. That's just an example of 2 that I see as a real possibility. Probably needs to happen. It would need to happen anyway. So by making this change, it would have that type of effect as far as some little bit of cost savings as well, and improving morale at the schools for having to keep staff back every single day to deal with student behavior waiting for the bus. So there's an impact on after-school programming and programming during the day as well. I'll give some examples of that. The Governor's School. Currently, students are taken over to the Governor's School at 12:30, and they go home at 4 o'clock. We would obviously be transporting them later in the day, which is going to be during transport hours. Honestly, at this point, we don't know if it can happen. North Star and NTC, same thing. The EVMS program, you've heard citizens come and speak to that. Currently, students ride the Maury buses in. They're shuttled over to EVMS at 7:25. They return at 8:40. Picking up, there's about 60 students from across the city. Because of the bell time change, those students will have to, more than likely would have to get to EVMS on their own and we understand that the hours are not changing as far as EVMS. So that is that's the first part of the presentation to talk about transportation, and Dr. Cataldo will give you a little bit more on the academic side. I'll sit back out of your way.
Thank you, Mr. Hazlett. Good afternoon, members of the board, Dr. Birdsong, Chair Gabriel. Yes, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the academic impact. So I have 2 areas, academic impact and before and after school programs. So overall, Mr. Hazlett mentioned specific programs. That's a much smaller population number of students that are in those programs. Overall, we don't see a huge impact as far as regular, elementary, middle, and high school students accessing the curriculum, working with the schedules, because it would just be a switch of schedules. So that part we don't see as a huge impact. One thing that we do see that could potentially impact are the elementary after-school program and their changes. For example, Mr. Hazlett mentioned some of the high school programs, North Star, EVMS, Governor's School, NTC. What we see for the elementary dismissals is because students are going to be getting out much earlier, they would be getting out at 2 o'clock for elementary school, that if there was an after-school activity for elementary school, those students would have to stay in that elementary school much longer, because traditionally what would happen is they're the last run. You know, elementary is the last run of the day. They can do remediation, like, for example, an SOL remediation. They can do that for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then the bus can come and pick them up. Now, when they get out at 2 o'clock, they get out at 2, then you have your middle schools getting out later, you have your high schools then getting out at 3:45, then they have to finish their run. So really, it would take them several hours to get back to the school to be able to transport those elementary school students home. So we see that as a potential impact, and you know, will teachers want to stay maybe 2.5, 3 hours for an after-school remediation? That's something we'd have to work out with our schools and with the teachers. So again, buses would not be available for elementary schools an hour after, like they are right now. We also see with the middle schools, their dismissal time, because their dismissal times will be pretty much the same time. It'll be that regular time, which I think now is 2:45 or so. Is it? Yeah, 2:45. So they'll get out around the same time. So we do not see a real appreciable change with middle schools and with their programs. There should be buses available to take those students home. Again, after they leave the middle school, instead of going to elementary, they would be going to the high school. One area we do see potential changes and a potential impact to our families is in before and after school care. Currently, we have the YMCA, we have the YWCA, we have Parks and Rec, as well as Champions that provide before and after school care. We've contacted all of these agencies, kind of letting them know where we are, and they were aware of it as well. And YMCA, YWCA, and Parks and Rec don't believe they'll be able to staff before school care, because before school care traditionally starts around 6:30 a.m. Well, by 7 a.m., students are allowed into the building, elementary school students are allowed into the building to go to breakfast. So that would only be a half an hour, so it would be challenging for them to have someone staff for 30 minutes or maybe even an hour. So those three areas, those three people, agencies, YMCA, YWCA, and Parks and Rec, decided not to do before care. I did speak with Champions, and they were going to attempt to do maybe a 6 to 7 a.m. before school care, 1 hour. They were going to try it for the first year to see how it went. Again, they do anticipate maybe it being a financial impact to them. They're not sure. But that's kind of the before care. So one of the issues or things that we saw that potentially could impact our families is the after-school care. So before, students are getting out around 4-ish. Their parents get off of work maybe 5:30, and they get picked up, I think at the latest is 6 o'clock. So that's 2 hours. What we're seeing now is students would be getting out at 2 o'clock. So 2 o'clock all the way till 6 o'clock, that's 4 hours. That's a longer amount of time. And in some of your families, instead of having an older brother or sister who's in middle school or high school watch the younger elementary school student home, those students will be in school. So we'll have our middle school students still in school, we'll have a high school student still in school until at least close to 4 o'clock. So for at least 2 hours, students are not going to be, the elementary school students will not be under the care of an adult or someone unless they opt for after-school care. So we looked at the after-school care. There will be, they believe, Parks and Rec, YMCA, YWCA, thought there would be a very small increase in the fee because it's going to be a longer period of time. And they would think that it could be around what they're paying right now, families, but they do believe it'd be a little bit more money. Parks and Rec, though, they have also anticipated that this is going to be, you're going to have a lot more families. They're going to need after-school care. Because, again, older brothers and sisters are going to still be in school, and most people work till around 5 or maybe 5:30. So they are going to be investing approximately $200,000 in after-school care, which is great, but we're not really sure if they're going to pass those costs on to the families to be able to keep their bottom line where it needs to be. So we do see a higher portion of students requiring this after-school care. We did ask all of our elementary school principals at the last principals meeting, and we asked them, currently, what are your numbers and what do you anticipate your numbers to be? And some of them maybe they had 30 or 40 students that were staying currently in aftercare from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Many of them anticipated maybe 150 or so, a lot more students, several times more than they are right now, requiring some kind of after-school care. With our current low SES percentage being high in this school division, we're not sure if families possibly could afford that. And if there already is a sliding scale fee, but it is still a fee that families before would not have to choose necessarily because they would have an older brother or sister. In this situation, they wouldn't have anyone who would be able to take care of them. And so that was one area for before and after school care that we thought would be an impact for students. This next part is athletics.
Athletics. So we'll talk a little bit about the budget implications of athletics. Of course, you've heard before the big ticket item is the field lighting, which is $3.7 million, and it can be phased in over 3 years. We are currently in contract negotiations for the initial work, having to do with design, the geotech work that was be involved in borings. That's about $170,000. This work would need to be done under any circumstances should we decide to light the fields anyway. The only funding source that we have available to us is the CIP, and going that route would result in having the lighting project done in lieu of other scheduled maintenance. Other budget implications include pool rental costs for the swimming programs, more than likely the need for outside transportation service, additional service to be able to transport students to games, and potentially field rentals. And we've explored the use, just so you know, we've explored the use of temporary or portable lighting for the fall sports like football, which can be done reasonably. For baseball and softball is much more expensive because of the height of the lights have to be because of baseball's fly balls. So another impact of that is availability of transportation. We've talked about this already, but the middle school athletic buses are at they're at 5 o'clock. We expect that can remain the same. No problem with the middle schools. High school athletic buses now are at 6 and 7. We would expect that to go to at least 6:30 and 8:30. High school students leave now at 3 o'clock for golf, baseball, softball, and tennis, and it's unlikely that buses would be available to be able to transport them for either practice or games. So either outside sources for transportation must be found, or students would have to be pulled and miss instructional time for that competition. After school tutoring and study halls. Currently, I'll give you two examples. The fall for football, for study halls, the kids get out at 2 o'clock. They have the study hall from 2 to 3. They then practice. They then have a meal, and then they're taken home around 6 or 7 o'clock on the late bus. Under the new schedule, the study hall would be from 4 to 5 with probably a snack, then practice. Then there would be an opportunity for a meal at 7:30, and then go home at 8:30. For a winter example for basketball, it's essentially the same limitations, and the big issue there is gym time, gym space. High schools have one gym. You have varsity and JV, boys and girls, with limited time to get into the gym. The JVs can go over to middle schools, and they do that until middle school basketball starts, and then they start getting squeezed there for time as well. Impact on instructional time. Students must leave school early for practice. I talked a little bit about that. Golf, baseball, and softball are some of the primary ones. Swimming, we're finding is going to be a huge challenge on a lot of levels as it relates to the pools. We have one pool, as you know, which is at Maury High School, and Mr. Suppmiller is in conversations with ODU and Virginia Wesleyan to see what we can do. The city has been, the city said that the aquatic center over in Compostela would only be available to us for meets and no longer for practice, because all the public pools have community events dealing with them as far as open swim and other programming that they have. So that in fact is going to be a big event, a big challenge, I should say. So that goes into the bell times. Dr. Cataldo kind of talked about it a little bit at the February 20th, 2019 school board meeting. The board voted basically for a range of times for elementary, 7:30 to 4:30 in the morning. Start time ending at 1:55 to 2:05. The middle schools, 8:05 to 8:15. And then in the afternoon dismissal would be 2:35 to 2:45. And high schools, 8:50 to 9 o'clock. And in dismissal at 3:30 to 3:45. At the administration, going through the analysis, dealing with transportation and all the other factors involved, settled on what we felt the best times would be for elementary schools, 7:35 to 2 p.m. For middle schools would remain the same at 8:15 to 2:45, and high school times would be 9 a.m. to 3:45. So with that, that is our update relative to school start times.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Birdsong.
We wanted to give the board an opportunity to respond to the information first.
Sure, okay. Questions from board members? Mr. Clanton?
So I appreciate this information. When we actually took up the resolution, I guess, what was that, January, February? Stuff started running together. January. One of the things that I was, in things moving, I really wanted more time because I felt like there was something missing for me, and I kept asking the question, my colleagues, and that was, what's the ripple effect? And I even think my comments were talking about some of the things that were coming to me, even personally, looking at my niece, who's in elementary school, and my sister, who doesn't get off work until 6 o'clock. And she's currently in an after-school program, and how does that adversely affect so many? And now looking at everything that's here before me, if I recall myself, I was at a point where I had to make a decision on a vote. And sitting in that room, I had to make a tactical one because I wanted more time, because we had called the question. And so I needed to vote in the majority if I wanted more time to consider this. And to be perfectly honest, I can't see myself making a decision that will adversely affect our kids and our community. I've read every letter. I've read every comment, the phone calls. I can't see myself as a member on this board making a decision that will have a ripple effect that will cause harm to our students and to the operations of this district, and not being able to operate at the level of efficiency that we need to. And so with that, honestly, I'm at a point right now where I want to reconsider what that resolution was and to postpone it indefinitely. And so, because we really need to look at this. And who is it, corporate strategies, that I don't want to see another proposal coming to this board, especially to me, and I may speak for myself and not for the rest of the board, that doesn't give me the other side of the story. And I appreciate you all coming here today and giving us the other effects that this will have. I mean, I appreciate those citizens, parents, and everyone else who's spoken up. So with that, I'm just saying that I am moving to reconsider and postpone indefinitely the resolution that we voted on in January based on this information I've got here today.
Ms. Campson. Oh, sorry. We'll go Ms. Basine and then Ms. Campson. Ms. Basine?
Well, you can let her go ahead. I'll
Ms. Campson?
round up. I mean,
Well, as you know, I talked to you about my concerns about, I mean, as we talked about having a delay, and I voted for the delay because I wanted to know exactly what was going on. I mean, I voted against it because I wanted a report here to tell me exactly what was going on, that we were hearing such different information than we heard all last year when we came new to the board, and this was already been, you know, researched and everything by these consultants. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing this other stuff, and that's why I wanted to have this presentation before we made any decisions to do anything. And having listened to this, but I didn't even need to listen to this because I listened to the parents. And that's why we listen to our stakeholders. That's why we asked them to come and speak to us. They'll be speaking to us tonight about the budget. That's why we read their letters and listened to their phone calls and started hearing all of these negative things that never were included in any presentations that we heard last year. I've been an educator my whole life, and there's no new news here that these early start times are not good for high school kids. I mean, we've heard it for years, and the science backs it up, and we listened to the psychologist, and we listened to the ER docs, and it all made sense, the science was there. But what we didn't do is I didn't, I'm not speaking for anyone else, didn't look at it, and I should have, because Jalen gave us last year, our student representative gave us a really good introduction of what about the families where they have the kids working after school part-time. And maybe we should listen to the student on the committee. Maybe I should have. But I was flabbergasted how it just changed so fast this year, and we got such a different side of information. And this has just been exactly what I've been hearing from parents, phone calls and letters, and when they talk to us. And that's why I went to Dr. Gabriel and said, I'm not sure we need to be voting on delays or not delaying implementation, because what I'm hearing with parents is what they're really interested in is us revisiting even doing it in the first place. Maybe this is not the district that's the right district for it because of the demographics that we have and the struggles that so many of our families have, and they don't have their own transportation, and they don't have money to pay for childcare. They need older siblings to watch younger siblings, or they have siblings who are working, or they have children working after school, not to earn money to buy a cute new pair of sneakers, but to help put food on the table. A lot, I mean, more and more, the more I heard about it, we had so many wonderful parents sharing their experiences with us at the last meeting, and then they've certainly shared here, and I have to say, our PTA president, Sharice Newsom, spent an hour on the phone with her one Sunday afternoon. She's a great spokesman for parents. She's a person that hears it all from all the different schools because it feeds up to her. So, you know, whatever the legalities need to be, and Mr. Clanton's the one who will guide us through that, but I'm certainly in favor of looking at whether we should even do it or not.
So I just need to make sure that what I'm hearing is actually a motion on the floor. I know that we typically do not do that.
I didn't make a motion because.
But I'm hearing from Mr. Clanton that you are proposing a motion on the floor.
For the business meeting.
This is a duly called meeting. I'm making a motion now. It's not regularly, but I'm making a motion.
We haven't even had a discussion.
So,
Well, I mean, you have a
understand that,
motion
but-
on the floor, and then you have discussion.
We had a work session. The purpose of the work session is to have the discussion. We should be allowed to have the discussion.
But, you know, and,
I mean, I don't have a problem.
no. I mean, and I'll be perfectly fair. I'll reserve that I have no problem until everyone has discussion about it, but I don't think it's going to change my opinion on this right now.
It's fine.
Okay, all right. So then what we'll do is, Ms. Basine,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I had my hand up a while ago. So, first of all, this is a matter of public health concern. And as far as I know, when we have a public health concern, we address it. The notion that the information received from this year as compared to last year is true in that we haven't received information this year, which I have found very disappointing up until August 2nd, when we actually received an update. The notion that we didn't know all of the challenges that would take place is false, and I can't allow that narrative to continue because we've known about childcare. We've known about, work schedules. We've known about athletics. We've known, and not only that, every district that has ever made this change has had the same obstacles to making that change. My question to you is, we had options that were presented in October, whether we agreed to go with a particular option, which was to fully fund the lighting and all the other pieces necessary to implement this change. And then January, we received no information because at that time, so we couldn't go forward with option A. So then what is the plan with option B? So I'm not hearing a continuation of that conversation. And I think that absolutely needs to be had because there was lots of work done last year. I provided this board a timeline of all of the meetings, community meetings, and various forms of input that was received by this board and by the previous board and administration. So right now, what we have seen this year is a lack of information, and I'm disappointed about that. Furthermore, transportation. There were things in the Council of Great City Schools report that we received last year that would have impacted some of these things. I would like to know if the recommendations that were made there, which included routing software, additional routers, efficiency in the routes itself, which we know right now, as you mentioned, we have some serious challenges with transportation, buses picking children up and getting them to school on time. That is a current challenge as it stands. And that needs to be fixed right away as well. As for high school students, we received, not high school, as far as parents go, yes, we've received emails and calls from parents that are opposed to this change, but we have also received calls and emails and people coming to the podium to support the change. And I'm the only one sitting here who has a student who's a high schooler, who, by the way, is, fell into the, of actually circulating a petition, so not in agreement with me. So don't think that I'm pushing this because I have a child, because he didn't agree with me either, because he likes getting home early to chill out, before he goes to practice, which I have to transport him there too. So all of these things, we have inequities in our athletic programming. We have a lot of things that need to be addressed because all of our kids are not offered the opportunity of study hall after school, aren't offered the opportunity of a meal, aren't offered the opportunity of having transportation to their athletic events. Sometimes they come home at 11 p.m. as it is now, and that needs to be fixed as well. As far as impact to instructional programming, I don't understand the piece where they would have to leave school to then go to practice. I would think that practice would then be delayed till they're out of school. Isn't that correct?
Excuse me, I think he was referring to games.
Okay.
Like some of the games, not practices.
Okay.
Like maybe out-of-district games.
Okay.
Like, yes.
Okay. And then next, have you talked to Fairfax? Have you talked to Chesapeake, other districts that are doing this? I mean, we have Chesapeake who also has students at GSA. How are they getting their students there? I mean, I think there are questions here that I'm not hearing, that we've been asking, that I'm not hearing responses to, and I would really like to hear those. I can't force this division to do something that it is not prepared to do, but I will be holding people accountable for not having this done, because we had a delay last year, and now we're here again, and to hear that work had not been done, which I don't think is quite accurate, but if we've spent the last 9 months getting to this point where we haven't made progress, I think there should be some accountability taken. And so I'm disappointed to hear the presentation. It's March, and I know parents, I've been like, do you know the times? Do you know the times? We need to plan for next year. It's really important that they have this information now. And so,
So I'm
I
gonna
don't know
let-
what the next step is.
I'm going to let Mr. Hazelet and Dr. Birdsong address any of the questions that you brought up. If they'd like.
And so the comment about you don't believe that the information that Mr. Hazelet provided about what was done last year, you said you didn't believe that. Is there any particular reason? And then I'd like you to address what you've learned since August being here and follow up conversations with transportation about what was done or what wasn't done.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back to all of the meetings that we've had on this topic. I shared a timeline with everybody, which I had shared with parents, so that they could see the amount of time that we have spent on it, and including the community meetings we had last year, where parents did come out. I went to every single one of them. I was only a board member at every single meeting, and I heard those concerns, which were the same concerns, and they're valid concerns. And they're concerns that come up in every district across the nation that is doing this. So there were no surprises whatsoever. In fact, even with the previous administration, I said, these are things that you should know off the bat are going to be obstacles, because they happen every time. They come up every time.
But can you let him respond?
Yeah.
Well, for me, personally, I think that, I don't believe comparing Norfolk to Chesapeake in this instance is a fair comparison. I believe that the demographics of Chesapeake and Norfolk are significantly different. The challenges that the families in Norfolk face are far different than most of the families in Chesapeake. I've never lived in Chesapeake. I've always lived in Norfolk, so I just think Norfolk is different, and I don't think that you can, because Chesapeake does it, to say that we can do it. The beach does a lot of things that we don't do also, and we do a lot of things that they don't do. So I think we have to be aware of the demographics of our city. So I can't, again, I'm sorry, Ms. Boucher, I wasn't here, so I can't speak to what happened or didn't happen before.
And I'm not just talking to you, yeah. I mean,
I can tell you
give it
that
to me.
when I did come back, I immediately started asking questions, started making inquiries, trying to see which way to go, and to get the information that was going to be critical to making a sound decision. And at every turn, it was, maybe work had been done, but it maybe wasn't thoroughly vetted. Honestly, can't speak to that.
So, and to be clear, I'm not talking about you
Oh, I'm not taking it personally.
Yeah.
I'm just,
I'm talking about
yeah.
as a division. I mean, we've had lots of turnover, and the initiatives that we begin, we should be able to continue those through through turnover.
Right.
And honestly, I know there's been, some talk about, new individuals taking on certain roles and things, but for the most part, a majority of the people have been here, aside from, maybe a couple of them, And Cooperative Strategies has been involved with the division since 2013. So if there is an obstacle with Cooperative Strategies, I mean, we're talking about the budget and contract services, then I want us to have that conversation, because I want to know where this has fallen through the cracks. And I would like to hear more from you about that, which is why, I'm raising these concerns. I'm deeply passionate about this. And I want to know where it's falling through the cracks, so that we have a lot of big things coming up, as you know, with the educational planning work. If we can't move things forward, then, and promote public confidence in the work that we're doing, I don't know how we're going to do any of this, what I hope will be courageous work going into the future.
Right.
And
I agree with you,
Yeah.
100%. And so I know I keep hearing, we've been asking for this since, 2018 or 2017 or what have you. And our reality is we've been asked to turn this work around in a few months. And it has not been difficult. Yes, we have plugged along. Yes, we have worked very hard to get the information that we need so that you can make an informed decision, but we can't make things that didn't happen right now. And I think Mr. Hazelette is trying to be very politically correct, but I think there was some work that just simply was not done. And so it wasn't done. So we are at the point now that we are trying to pick up the pieces and move this forward as quickly as we can. And we've been working very, very hard to do that. And so while I appreciate your comments, our reality is that things weren't done. And we are working hard to make sure that we're able to give you that information and move things along, which I think we have done.
Mr. Jordan?
So first, I just have a favor to ask. I know we were considering a moment ago of maybe voting on something. I would just ask if we're going to vote on it, if we do it at the business meeting. Normally, we'd come here for work sessions. Through the previous presentation, there are all kinds of things that I would like to see the board vote on in terms of the proposed budget. I think this is a time for us to have that discussion, and I was surprised that the resolution was approved when we voted on it. So I'm not surprised if support has waned in the onslaught of the community response. I would like to say that just personally, and someone who's been involved and engaged with things in Norfolk for a long time, I want us to find a way to change our goals and expectations for our children in our city. I hear you in terms of economics and circumstances. We will bulldoze 2,000 children in a heartbeat if that's what we think needs to be done. We will resegregate our middle schools when there's not one iota of research that suggests that it's a good thing to do. So oftentimes our most vulnerable children and our most vulnerable families are on the negative side of actions that are taken. Money is found, things come together that don't work in their interest. The whole rationale behind the later start times was to do some things that were better for children, and in our case, in a division that is 70% free and reduced lunch and 70+% African American or students of color. And I think we've got to find a way as a board and as a division to truly believe and support our goals and beliefs, that because we have the demographics that we have, and because we know historically Norfolk and some parts of Norfolk have been on the negative side of the equity equation, we need to find ways of implementing things for their benefit.
Yeah.
And I mean the benefit of all, and not necessarily come up with reasons why we can't. I am concerned both in terms of, Ms. Basine mentioned the Council of Great City report on transportation and finance and forgot what the facilities. The board made the decision to not allow us to have those conversations when we had the opportunity to do so.
Right.
So I don't have any, I don't think it falls on Dr. Birdsong, and I don't think it falls on those that she has brought in to get work done, under the circumstances that you inherited. But I think we have to take some ownership, and even going forward, we still have not looked at the Great City School report. Since now March will be 2 years. So I am concerned, and I sent you all a memo around the budget. I still am concerned whether or not these recommendations that were there were done, because one of the things that they spoke to was whether or not there was even a working computer that they could install the software on. So I don't know if we just got around to trying to install the software on the non-working computer in the last 2 months, or if it was 2 years ago. But there are some significant areas in there that need addressing, not only from the transportation side, but even as we were just talking about the pay and comp study. If it's going to take additional resources to look at 3,000 index cards, whatever it is that we need to do, I want our budget discussions to be around how do we then, in our proposal, put the resources in place so we have the human and physical infrastructure to move forward. I don't care what the proposal is. Otherwise, we can add on things and add on things and add on things, but if we don't take care of the infrastructure, and if we don't give Dr. Birdsong what we haven't given previous superintendents, the infrastructure to be successful, then I think that's on us. And when I hear what we're talking about now, I hear that on us. So if we go the path of pulling back, that's the will of the board. But I still think, since we're in this conversation around the budget, we need to know, at least I feel I need to know, as a board member, what is it that this division needs, whether it's transportation, whether it's research, whether it's human resources, whatever it is, so that these things that we know that we already have on the plate and may add on the plate with our new strategic plan can actually get implemented, and implemented in the best interest of all children. Because right now, we have a school system where, we ramp up, ADL gets taken care of. Southside STEM still struggling. We'll ramp up other things in other parts of the city, still struggle. We cannot continue, in my opinion, down this path of inequity, and one side of town finds resources and the other side of town struggles. And that's the part that bothers me more than anything else. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
So I think that everybody here has genuine concern about some of the items that we have either said that we are going to embark upon, or things that we want to continue to address. And yes, we all have a copy of the Council of Great Cities School Report. We've all had the ability to read it. But the board gives that information to the superintendent to then make recommendations to us dependent upon what he or she feels is necessary in order to move the division forward based upon the goals that we set out. And I do recall from our last budget discussion that there were some changes done in transportation based upon that report. And so while not everything was done, there were initiatives that were done. Do we need to come back and have a full discussion about the Council of Great Cities report?
Have you had a discussion about it?
No.
We have not yet. We have not. We have not. We have not.
Yeah, we
But
haven't, and there were some reasons why we didn't have that.
Right.
And why it got pushed off. And
That's
that was
right.
under the former administration, but,
that's right. We had some weather items that came up, a hurricane that
because they
came
were
up.
already on the agenda and then they got moved.
And then it was scheduling to have the presenters come in. I'm not going to rehash that, because everything that we talk about in our limited time that we have here is very, very precious and important. And I can certainly understand Ms. Bassine's concerns, just as I can certainly understand Mr. Clanton, Ms. Campson's concerns about information that they are receiving. However, no one here is disputing the science. That's number one. No one disputes the science. No one disputes the fact that there is research out there to show that a time change for high school students is beneficial. However, when we look at Norfolk Public Schools, can we make this happen seamlessly and without any extra harm provided to our students, to our families, for the September school start time, for the September start time? I'm not hearing that from the administration right now. What I'm hearing, and I thank you, Dr. Birdsong, actually, for providing the information about the YMCA, the after-school care programs, the GSA, the EVMS program, all of that. I believe you are doing your due diligence, and that you are trying to fill in the gaps of There's a lot of discussion that takes place, but the actual implementation and what that would look like, just knowing that there would be possibly 150 more students per school that would have to utilize after-school care, that's important information for us. Can we make that happen within the September timeframe? I'm hearing from the administration that that is an area of significant concern. And so I think that as a board, we have to think about not disputing the science, but are we ready as a division to take this challenge? And again, not disputing the fact that, yes, we're going to have to make some commitment items to say if we want to do something, how do we find ourselves accountable even through transition? I do not dispute that. But right now, with where we are, with the concerns that have been raised previously and just recently, I have concern, which is why I didn't vote for it in the first place, when it was brought back to our attention, about implementing it without causing further harm. It really bothers me to hear that some programs, such as the EVMS program, might have significant impact if we do this without thinking it through, without having some good quality plans and discussion that would take place. So I know that traditionally we don't vote at a work session. And if it's the will of the board to not do that, I can certainly understand that. However, we have a lot of items on our plate right now, and we've heard a lot of information about this. I would not be opposed if we needed to make a decision on this right now, so that way you can focus on other items that you are trying to address: literacy, the school maintenance items, everything that you've identified in your budget, honestly. So what I'd like to do is get a poll from the board to see if that's the direction that you'd like to move in, and if so, to consider it.
Can I ask one question of Dr. Birdsong? With the school start times, are there any budget implications that we're currently preparing for and preparing with our budget right now?
No.
Okay.
No. There's nothing that I have presented to you that reflects a change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because again, this was supposed to realize efficiencies for the division.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Ms. Basine?
So given that the last meeting, we had obviously voted to move forward with implementation, I didn't see any budgetary allocations for it in the operating or in the CIP. Can you explain why that is?
So what did you expect to see? For example, what did you expect?
For example, so it was mentioned that that we weren't going to have the $3 million for the lighting, which was one of the options that was presented. And then there were other options that were presented, which was nearly $1 million the first year and then over 2 years to phase in, right? So I didn't see where that was, where any of those were addressed, given that we had asked, that we had voted to asking the administration to continue with implementation.
Well, that's a fair question.
Yeah.
And so we had planned to use year-end funds to move forward with securing the lighting, the temporary lighting, or either, starting that work. So we decided to do that, and we've had to move forward with that process already because regardless of what you decide to do, that's still something that has to be done.
Okay, and roughly how much?
170, was it 170?
For the design work and the geotech work, and then what they have to do on site with borings was a little over $170,000.
Okay.
And quite honestly, if I may, to your point about the 3.7 million, I just can't, in good conscience, with all of the building maintenance and repair items that we have, I just don't see how we can, and of course, we would do what we would need to do, but asking for that as a priority item, I just had concerns about that, to be quite honest with
Sure.
you.
And, but we had different phase-in options that were also proposed to us. And so my question is, I get that 3.7 may have been, considerable considering the other needs in the district. But, again, what is the phase-in for this plan. And so that's what I'm asking.
Well, the phase-in would be 1.3 million, in addition to the $170,000 design work. And like I say, we've already entered conversations to proceed on with that work anyway.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a way, but the funding source is still going to have to be the CIP to be able to cover that. I don't know that I don't know the available funds to be able to do phase one of that based on year-end dollars.
So what I'd like to do is hear from any board members if they'd like to propose a motion to discontinue the discussions at this point in time on the early start times until we can reconvene and have any further discussion after the budget proposal.
As I stated before, because we've already approved a resolution, and because I'm also hearing that you're in contract negotiations, and I heard $170,000 that could go somewhere else if we don't move forward with that. Because I've voted in the prevailing side, I want to move to reconsider and postpone indefinitely the discussion regarding the school start times for next year, based on the information I've gotten here today and just everything. We're not ready.
Okay.
Do you need a second for that?
Yeah, there's a
Yes,
second.
we would need a second for that.
And I was also in the majority last time too, so I guess that means that I would be a person, and I would second that.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on that? Ms. Basine?
I disapprove of voting today during a work session when I think there's more information to process. I also disapprove of postponing the discussion indefinitely. Again, it's a matter of public health, and to postpone the discussion, and it's a matter of public health, not just for those who are the haves, but it's for everybody. And so I won't support that. And you know the rest of my thoughts about that, so.
Madam Chair, for clarity, when I mentioned postpone indefinitely, because we operate on a July 1 to June 30 discussion, it indefinitely is till June 30th. We could definitely talk about this next year of pulling this up. But I hear the argument of that this is public health, but I counter with that, and I respect what my colleague has stated, but I also see this as a public safety issue. I can't see elementary school kids literally waiting home because their parents can't get home to 5, 6 o'clock, and they don't have an older sibling to watch them and being told, keep the door closed or answer the phone, or getting up before the sun rises and sitting at a bus stop in the morning. So I counter that with the respect that I also see that this is a public safety issue. And I don't disapprove or argue with the science that this could work. But again, I look at what was stated with Mr. Hazlett in respect to Chesapeake. Chesapeake School is a city that started 50-some years ago. They came with a totally different process in how they did their schools. Norfolk did the same thing, and to be perfectly honest, I came through along with some others through the old process, and yeah, I would love to got more sleep, but I think that the ripple effect of what we do here today will cause more harm, and I just believe that we need to have more time to think it through. And I think that if we have a solid plan, we've given it more time, then I may be in a different position. But if I see something that's going to adversely affect, and going back even to the argument of equity, we look at all the things that we've heard here today, I can't see how that is disproportionately and not giving equity to our students. Many of our families are already struggling. Many of their high school students are having to work jobs after school to help support their families. So I don't see how we can say that this decision will somehow bring about great equity. I see it as a action that could potentially create more disequity within our communities. And so I think we need more time. I think we need more time to discuss it, to research it, and to come with a solid plan. If we have a solid plan, I can be behind that. But today I can't do that. I just can't.
Any further discussion?
So are we discussing
We have a,
the potential for the motion, or are we do we have a motion and a
we have a
second?
motion and we have a second,
Okay.
and we're in the discussion about
That I
that.
had, so, I just wanted to clarify, my comment wasn't that, implementing or not implementing, school start times was, equity issue in and of itself. I'm talking about the whole approach. So even as we're in this meeting, we received a press release related to the facilities master plan comment. I'm looking at the document that's there. It's referencing Lake Taylor School and Booker T and Norfolk Technical Center and things we just kind of just talked about in an earlier presentation. What's missing in this and all the educational planning that we've been doing, going back to the master milestones and all of that, has been a commitment to having socially diverse economic schools, and to make sure that all children have access to exceptional options. And so what I was speaking to is time and time again, when it is time, in my view, of trying to advance that, it doesn't get advanced. But I, respect the fact, I had heard coming into the meeting that this was gonna happen, so I'm not surprised by that. I just would have preferred that we do it at a business meeting, and we can let the superintendent know what our, where our senses, I think she's already heard where the majority of the board may be. I just think at the same time we're having these discussions about citizens' comment and family engagement and public input, that this will be another example where we've walked something on to vote on that the public didn't know that we were going to do. And so I just think that trying to stick with that process of doing our votes at the business meeting, giving the public an opportunity to know that and weigh in, is important. But if we've got a motion and a second on the floor, the chair calls for the vote, then I'll vote accordingly.
I respect that, Mr. Jordan, and typically I know that this does not fall with the typical way that we would carry out our business with regard to the votes. However, we are board members that are elected by the public body in order to serve the best interest of the entire division. And I think that at this point in time, we have heard a significant amount of information. That's not to discount what we heard at the public hearings when we first entered into this discussion. But at this point in time, I think we have to do what we need to do as public officials, and to not postpone it, as some might think, indefinitely, as in forever, but just until, as Mr. Clanton had said, June 30th, until we can revisit this discussion again. We're only talking a couple of months. But again, from what I've heard from the administration, it's a matter of, can we do this and have the least amount of impact on students and staff and families, and execute it the way that we would want to do it in the correct way, versus really rushing something through, and then what else gets pushed aside, because we are going to be putting a lot of resources into making sure that this is done successfully. That is my fear. And this is a difficult decision. I'll have to say it is a difficult decision, because I have been working on this for a long time as well, but I cannot support putting the resources to this at this point in time. So what I would like to do is take a vote at this time and have a decision made on it. So, Ms. Tanner, if you could please call the roll. If you wouldn't mind just restating the motion so that everybody is aware of what is being said.
Okay, is a motion to move to reconsider and postpone indefinitely on school start times for next school year, in parentheses, June 30th, 2020.
Mr. Clinton?
And so for clarity, the resolution that we voted on in January was a recommendation to postpone the start time, and the prevailing side was no, which was to start. So the motion that I'm making today is to reverse that and to propose, and postpone indefinitely discussion until the end of June 30th.
Maybe you need to put that June 30th into the thing, so that doesn't, that indefinitely doesn't, I think
Okay.
that's what's
Well,
throwing.
add June 30th,
Mm-hmm. Okay,
please.
okay. Call the roll.
Okay. Basine?
Yay.
Campson?
Yes.
Clanton?
Aye.
Smith?
I'm voting yes because we're clearly not ready to move forward with this. But I think we should have been further along than what we currently are. So my answer is yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Jordan?
Nay.
Gabriel?
Yay. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda, 5.01 textbook adoption.
Yes, Mr. Brady is going to come forward and provide us some information about the textbook adoption process.
And for this,
In their English and health and PE, history, social science.
yes, good evening, Dr. Birdsong, Dr. Gabriel, school board. For time's sake, Ms. Tanner, if you can skip to slide 6, we'll move this along. It's the timeline. Yeah, thank you. Yes, we have two content areas up on cycle, 7-year cycle for textbook adoption. That's English and health. And then we have to add an AP social studies textbook because last time history, social science did a textbook adoption, AP World History was not offered at any of our high schools. So Mari is going to add that course next year as an opportunity for their students, and so we needed to adopt a history textbook as well. So with the timeline, the teacher committees have been meeting since December. They've been evaluating the textbooks according to Norfolk policy. They've had the opportunity to interact as well with the textbook publishers to learn the features of the textbooks and all of the accompanying materials that come with the textbooks. And we've also had the opportunity for community input as the textbooks have been on display at various public libraries. If you can skip forward a little bit further to the first English page. We have assurances from the textbook companies that their materials are accurate. Along with textbook adoption also comes the professional development that the publishers will provide in training the teachers how to use all the features of the new textbooks. And so that will begin and will be an ongoing process. I should refer to the timeline that you looked at. We've traditionally adopted textbooks in May at your May business meeting. We've moved that up to March so that we can get the textbooks into the schools prior to the end of school. We've run into a lot of summer delivery issues because nobody knows where the textbooks were placed when they arrived. And this would also give the teachers an opportunity to have the new textbooks when they leave for the summer, and they can start getting acquainted with those. So with the English recommended textbooks, Gwen can give you the title.
Okay, good afternoon. So the English textbook that the committees have chosen to recommend to you all is My Perspectives. It's by Pearson. All of the textbooks that we looked at were vetted by the VDOE, and they're on their textbook recommended list for the 2017 standards. So I'm just going to give you 3 quick highlights about this textbook and why our teachers, so it's grades 6 through 12 in our English classes. The first piece is the units are themed. And so each unit contains authentic text that is culturally relevant and diverse across a multitude of, each theme has several genres of text within them. And that one thing we're trying to do in the English office is embed reading and writing in our units, and this textbook does that. So each unit has embedded reading and writing together. The other piece that it's done is it's scaffolding the instruction, and so within each unit there are higher level text and lower level text so that we can meet the needs of all of our learners, including some English language learners where we have text to support them as well. So that scaffolded piece is very important with whole group instruction, small group instruction, and then independent learning along with the textbook. So it's a consumable textbook, or you can get a hard copy. There are novels that we can purchase to add to our curriculum that would be just a supplemental piece. And then the last piece that our teachers, all of our review committees found is that My Perspectives is very user-friendly, and so user-friendly from the teacher aspect and the student aspect. I had some high school teachers that had their students look at the textbooks that we had, and they gave feedback on that. But we also had the teachers, so every high school had samples to look at, and one of the things that the committee started to find is that it was very user-friendly to the teacher when you start looking at the print and digital resources that are there for the teacher for instructional purposes, which I think will really help our new teachers. We have a lot of new teachers, and when a textbook adoption comes, there's lots of moving parts to it, and My Perspectives is very streamlined and easy to read and easy to follow and monitor. So that is the English recommendation, My Perspectives.
Thank you. The state does not adopt health textbooks, but Virginia Code gives you the authority to adopt textbooks for the district in spite of that. So in health, Mr. Person is here.
Good evening, Dr. Birdsong, members of the board. Based on data that we received from my committee, we decided to go with the Goodhart-Wilcox Comprehensive Health textbooks. We feel like they're great textbooks, and they provide extensive instructional resources that are aligned to our SOL standards. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the AP World History textbook for the new course being offered at Maury High School is from Bedford, Freeman, and Worth. The committee thought the textbook was very strongly aligned to the College Board course, and also the accompanying primary documents that the teachers thought would be very beneficial to have. And so the recommended textbooks are going to be put in the board conference room tomorrow, and you'll be able to have access to those recommended textbooks for the next 2 weeks up until the business meeting on March 18th, where we'll be looking for adoption so we can start the next process. So, and any questions at all?
Sure. Ms. Basine and then Ms. Martin.
Can you share how much public input has been received to date on the different textbooks?
Yes, for the English textbooks, we had those. In fact, tomorrow will be our end of the month. They've been on display for a month at the Slover Library, and we received 2 public comments.
2?
Mm-hmm.
What about for the health and the history textbooks?
So our books were on display at the Prepolo Library, and we had 2 responses. Actually, one was from an actual teacher has a student in the district.
Okay. And the history?
And there was no public comment left for the advanced placement textbook.
Okay. So I think we need to seriously reconsider. I remember last time we did them, same situation. that, public comment is really, the public is not accessing the textbooks so that they can provide the comments. So I think we need to really consider that. The second piece of that is, so are we using some sort of, a scorecard or something that really tells us, are they inclusive texts? Do they really accurately, especially for history? We know there's a lot of discussion, a lot of concern about it accurately depicting history. Like, what kind of evaluation tools are you using to determine which textbooks are best, aside from whether the state's recommending them?
Yeah, and even the ones that the state recommends, we still go through the same evaluation process internally on those. The scorecard, the evaluation sheets are quite extensive. They're scored in probably 5 or 6 different areas, alignment, to the standards.
Bias.
Yeah, if there's any bias, accuracy of content, even the durability of the book is part of that. All those categories are weighted, and then they're scored, and then we collect those scores from all of the committee members, and we see what the consensus is.
Okay. I think it'd be great if we could see what that tool looks like, and maybe that might even help guide the public in giving, feedback, because maybe, I don't know, does the public know what kind of feedback you might be looking for? I mean, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, in the past,
Well, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, in the past, we've provided a different type of score sheet for the public.
Okay.
Not one that asks for them to do an alignment of the textbook.
Well,
to the
sure, I mean,
standards.
something
Yeah.
that's relevant to, the general
Yes.
public, yeah.
But we can provide the evaluation sheets to you,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Martin?
My questions were pretty much the same thing as what Tanya was asking, because, I work at the Sliver Library, and we have that table very prominently displayed on the first floor, right outside of the elevators, where we get a lot of traffic, and we also get a lot of people who are just kind of hanging around, and they can read them. And I went through and I looked through them as well. There are a lot of books there. So you can't go through all of them.
One of those.
Well, I didn't comment, but I think one of the pieces, and I think Ms. Vecino is correct in this, is that what are you looking for? I mean, there was the sheet down there to leave your comments, but I think some more guidance on, what exactly you're looking for. That might be like a poster. I mean, Slover, we can help you do that sort of thing, but like, something that, more of an advertisement that draws you there, because there were smaller signs and there's a lot of books there, maybe just like take one book and, evaluate this book or something. You might just make it easier on the user on what you're asking. But I perused through the books, a few of them, and I thought, these look fine to me, that sort of thing. I couldn't find anything not correct with it, but a lot of times people are only going to give you the criticism, right? But you also want to know what the positives are.
In the past, we've gotten a little bit of both. Yeah.
Mr. Jordan.
Just
then
a
Ms. Smith.
question, a comment. Where did you say that the AP World History course is being offered?
That's going to be offered next year at Maury High School.
Maury only?
At this time, yes.
Okay.
AP World History hasn't been offered in the district for maybe 12 years. Back at that point, it was offered at Lake Taylor High School. And I think it was a case where the teacher left, and there was nobody proficient enough, because AP courses, you've got to, be all about that content, and so nobody stepped in at that point to take that course, and so it wasn't offered anymore. Maury is trying to.
The decision for Maury this year or next year is based on?
Yeah, they have a staff member that is very deep in world history, very, very capable of providing the type of instruction in AP and working with those students that's necessary of a teacher.
So can you tell the board a little bit more about the vetting process? Like, how was it determined that the teacher at Morey was more capable than not capable, but that may not be the appropriate word, but why Morey as opposed to the other 4 high schools? How was that vetted so that it landed at Morey?
Yeah, well, Morey has a teacher who's very interested in teaching the course.
Okay, so based on interest?
Yes, strong background in world history at the level that's required of an advanced placement course. And so the actual vetting of the textbook, because we've had nobody who's taught AP World History, we pulled together our AP European History teachers in the district who are very experienced in AP and in European history, but they could take that insight into vetting this AP World History textbook.
And no interest from the other schools? No interest from the other, I'm
Not
not beating a dead
You're
horse.
fine.
Yeah, not at this time.
You go right to where my comment is.
Yeah.
But what happens a lot of times, and I've seen this with other AP courses, is that it's up and running at one building. Other teachers start hearing about that, and sometimes that can generate interest in the other schools. And so we
But
will
at
be.
this time, at the other 4 schools, there was no interest?
Not at this time. Not at this time. Yes.
So
We would be looking to do what we can to develop that interest,
Yes.
have this new AP
Absolutely.
World teacher
Absolutely.
speak to others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing what we can to publicize that,
Right.
how the students are doing. Students talk to each other. And so I would expect, and we would be looking to try and have that as an offering at our other schools as well.
So if I can give my comment first.
Okay, nope, this is what we're gonna do. The question before us is, we have to adopt textbooks. I understand why you want to get them out a little bit earlier so that you can get them into schools. So right now, the proposal is for us to vote on these textbooks at our March business meeting.
Yes.
I am hearing some questions from board members about some more public comment, parental involvement. Can we push it out a little bit more so that parents can have the ability to review the material, maybe a little bit of more guided information? Dr. Birdsong, what is your comments on that request?
Okay, so certainly the board would have to vote for moving forward, but I do hear some legitimate concerns, and so I'm not, is there a reason why it needs to be voted on in March?
Well, if we want to get the textbooks into the schools by the end of the school year.
By the end of this school year?
Yes.
Who asked for a delay? I didn't hear anybody.
There's no delay. No delay.
Okay.
What I'm
So
saying
what
is,
you
can we bring in that public comment by the time we vote on it? Because when we vote on it, we'll, again, open it for
Okay.
we can take it as a separate agenda item, and then we can have further discussion about it,
Yes.
so that we can hear if there's any further public comment on it.
The English textbooks are still on display at the Slover.
Okay,
So we can go over, get a poster up. All right, we can take a look at the evaluation for the public.
Facebook, so if anyone wants to go on my Facebook page and
share
it.
Maybe we also could post it on the NPS.
Yeah, it was, and the
We
district
could.
publicized it as well.
Yeah.
And we can move probably some of the health books over there, and we can extend the time for, that the public has to make
Yes.
comment.
right.
Absolutely.
So let me grab Mr. Jordan's comment, and then we'll go to Ms. Smith's comment, and then we're going to wrap up this discussion.
Yeah, I just was going to reiterate that, our school board accountability plan data shows that we have these disparities between students of color and low-income students having access to AP courses. And so I think if there's an opportunity, and I appreciate Dr. Birdsong for teasing all that out. I didn't hear why that teacher couldn't move to Booker T and do the course there. But I would also say that even when we are dealing with providing access to the material, Slover is wonderful and Pretlow is wonderful. I often hear that Park Place, Blyden Branch, and Jordan Newby are some of the most used branches. So if we're going to be intentional about trying to get this exposure and be inclusive and be culturally competent and all the things that we talk about, to me, it starts with our intentionality. And that's just going to be my continuing theme.
Yeah.
Because that, to me, matters.
It could be rotation. They could go on a rotation.
Yeah. Okay.
Most traffic, library, Janice, and Jordan Newby.
Yeah. My only point is that
Yeah.
you get, if you don't get the exposure, you don't get the exposure.
Right.
You get certain
Right.
demographics.
No, point very well taken. Ms. Smith?
Basically, Mr. Jordan said what I wanted to express, that we have to make sure that we make this accessible to everyone, because people, parents, students living on South Side, East Side, may not necessarily have the transportation to get to a Pretlow or a Slover to be able to look at these documents. So we need to put them where they are so that they can also have an opportunity to look at it. Same thing with the AP. What I'd like to see, although a teacher at Maury is showing the interest, we need to present it to all of the high schools, because the other teachers at the other schools may not have just stepped forward, but once they hear about it, they may be interested also, but we're losing out on an opportunity to ensure that we have sufficient materials for it, and giving everybody an opportunity to at least decide whether or not they want to participate.
Which is why I asked all of those follow-up
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. Okay. So we have 15 minutes until our public hearing at 7 o'clock, and I definitely do not want us to be late for that. So we are going to move on to a very brief update from the Policy Committee on our advisory committees. Ms. Martin and Ms. Basine, if you wouldn't mind.
Very easy.
Okay.
Just do a minute. We met, Tanya, she did a lot of work to help us to consolidate our policy. But now it's over to the administration to work on regulations.
Okay.
And so we are actually meeting, the policy committee meeting is March 20th, and we're going to be prepared to present at the next work session on April 1st, those recommendations. Do you have anything else to add?
Okay, all right. Okay, operations, Pixelot system.
Okay. Mr. Cip Miller, are you still here? I know you're here.
Talk fast.
I thought we were going to eat.
Talk fast.
And so,
Put the clock on him.
so we're excited to present to you something that we think will be very positive for our community. This would put Norfolk Public Schools on the cutting edge of being able to give our parents and extended families access to our children's athletic events. And so Mr. Cip Miller will briefly tell us a little bit about that process in a very condensed video about the process. And it's, you know, a vote is not required, but we wanted to share this with you this evening.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me present this important topic for athletics, because we do think it's something that's on the cutting edge for our stakeholders across the district. So what it's called, it's live streaming. You may have it in your notes as Pixelot, but that is the camera that each school, each gymnasium, and each football stadium will receive in order to do live streaming events for all our athletic events throughout the year. So that's from the varsity level, JV level, and even selected middle school events that are played in our stadiums and our high school gyms. So we're excited to be involved in this. We have vetted this out through our ELT team, and then we've gone through our tech IT folks to make sure the system point-to-point service works, and everything has been a thumbs up to this date. So
Include legal.
And legal has vetted this out, but we're going to revisit that one more time just to make sure it's all ready to go. And then we'll wait for Dr. Birdsong to give that final approval. So, but what I wanted to do tonight is really just show you what what will happen at our events with live streaming. So if we want to run the clips, and then I'll just say something briefly after that.
That way you can, our military families, if they have children and they're overseas, they can access it, or if a grandma in Georgia wants to see her grandbaby, she can access it.
Great idea.
Scouts.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's no sound, but as you watch it, this is the largest broadcast system in the country that the NFHS uses, and they have selected a number of schools across the country to provide these cameras free of charge, and the setup is free. So the cameras are $5,000 a piece, and they will be located again in our gyms and stadiums. So the biggest benefit is that people that can't attend these events will now be able to attend these events, whether they're overseas, grandma, grandpa, anywhere in the country, okay? They can see these events. They can stay at home in Norfolk and watch the events. They can upload it in their phones at the event and watch it. So there is a fee for this. So monthly fee is $10 that they would have to subscribe to, or they could get a seasonal fee for $70. Schools can generate revenue from this, which is another exciting thing for the schools, that either through advertising, and then they would get a percentage of the subscriptions that were bought by the school, by the individual. So this is the Pixelite system.
Is that middle and high schools?
They'll be in our high school gyms only,
High school,
in our high school stadium. So anything that's played there, so we can view it.
And why don't we have them in the middle schools? They do all these.
Because the NFHS is a high school program, and they're offering it only to high schools right now.
Oh, okay. Great idea.
Did you have a question, Mr. Plant?
No, I'm.
Two per school, so.
25,000? Okay.
Ms. Basine?
And do you know with other districts about, roughly, I know you can't say for sure, but approximately how much revenue has been gained at other districts? I mean, roughly?
The district that's, the city of Richmond does it. And they're just getting into it, so we don't have any real numbers yet in terms of what they've made, but they are making some money that's going back to their athletic programs.
Okay.
It's not going to be my budget, but it will be something.
Ms. Martin has a question.
Does the company limit us to only sporting events?
No. For example, we could, if we had graduations in the gym, if we had PE class, we could tape a PE class, and the principal can come back and watch it and evaluate the teacher. So there's a lot of things that you can do with it. It's just
Pep rally. She's thinking pep rally.
But it would still, so for graduation, when you have all that motion, it would still be able to pick up the motion of the graduation? Okay.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
And the monthly fee or annual subscription, it would come out of the school's budget?
No, that's from the individual. So if you wanted to buy one, that would be.
As a parent or, or relative or friend.
So there's no monitoring fee is what you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
Steve, is someone operating these cameras, or are they?
No, these are
automatic?
standalone cameras. So we'll be able to take down that footage and use it on NPS now, take some pressure off some of our folks that are going out and filming games. So it's just more access
So
there.
this is really exciting. So especially since we have so many military families, this gives them the opportunity, at least for the events that are held in the gym, to watch their children excel on the courts. So this is wonderful. Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I wanted to come back and just, I know that the next item on our agenda is for future agenda items, but I did want to come back to the budget question that we had about, do we want to meet for next week? And I'm just reviewing the timeline that Dr. Birdsong provided to us when we first entered into the budget discussions. So today is March 4th. We had our workshop, and we had discussion. March 18th, we are scheduled to adopt the school board's budget at our business meeting, and then on the 1st, we will be submitting this to the Norfolk City Council. What I need to hear from you all is, do you need further discussion on the budget before you take the vote at the March 18th meeting? And if so, then we would need to schedule it for next Wednesday. Okay, so Ms. Campson, Ms. Basine?
I have a concern about dropping these extra meetings in. I have Civic League. I'm meeting with the Civic League at that time next week. I mean, if we're doing it like a work session and we come in at 4, I'd have to check my calendar on that, but I have meetings with Civic Leagues all next week. And it was very hard to get them scheduled, and I don't want to call a Civic League president up and tell them I'm canceling them out now at the last minute, because they plan their speakers ahead of time. I just have a problem when we keep changing these dates around. I'm already concerned about the April meetings, by the way, the one that was switched from the third week to the second week. So, yeah, because I'm out of town. I'm taking my kids to Disney World.
Well, didn't it go into, it went into spring break.
And I planned it around this calendar, which is, I marked off every first Wednesday and every third Wednesday. And to have these things just pop up like this, you know, it's hard to get vacations in with the schedule we have. And I planned a vacation around making sure that it was not the first or third week. And now with this if we're having another one next week, I won't be able to come because I can't cancel out my Civic Leagues.
Right. No, I understand. I'm just hearing from all the members of the board to hear what their recommendation is. Ms. Basine?
As we typically do, and I believe in the outline, it did include March 11th as a tentative date for further budget discussion if needed. So I was prepared to come back, and based on the discussion we've had today, I certainly have a lot more questions. I mean, I think we just scratched the surface in the discussion. And some of us had requested, more data and more to really firm up some of the budget requests that are in there. So I would like to have, in order for me to adopt it, I certainly would have to have another meeting to get my questions answered.
Sure, fair enough.
I have more questions. We have not had ample time to really discuss this budget yet.
Okay.
So,
Could we do it earlier than like at 4?
Hold on. I haven't even proposed a time yet. We're
Okay.
just looking at March
Yeah.
11th, but it would probably.
Student appeals here.
no, that's what I was going to say. Dr. Lands, does it look like we're still going to have a student hearing next week on the 11th? Okay. Okay. We got 4:30, 5:30 hearing potential. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
That was my comment.
The student appeal?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, I think we should meet. I know we had some Q&A. I thought you had previously recommended that we hold the May 11th date for discussion. I sent you all a memo, so I just want to know the process for recommendations to get board support for any changes that we may want to do. And I also think that one of the things that we need to consider for the budget with the collective bargaining legislation that's making its way through the General Assembly. I also think we need to see if there's anything we need to be considering, whether it's just support or, staff support or whatever may be involved with some of these pieces of legislation that are making their way through the General Assembly that may get signed by the governor that I think we need to be in touch with. And in the memo that I sent to you, I'm recommending that we put request in to fund to put some funds aside in support of the Booker T resolution that we passed.
Okay. Ms. Campson?
Well, if we're going to do it next Wednesday, and it will be a work session, won't be a formal meeting, then could we do it at our work session time of 4?
Yes.
And then all
Yes.
right,
Yes.
then that's fine, I just can't cancel out my
Yes.
civic leagues.
So what I
Thank
need to
you.
do then
Thank you for
is if, Ms. Tanner, if you could reach out with Dr. Lands to see about the student appeals for tomorrow. And if we need to earmark the time of 4 o'clock for continued budget discussion from 4 to 5, then we can have that discussion. And again, at that point in time, we would need to come together on our thoughts for adoption at the March meeting.
Okay, I just
Okay.
want to make sure I'm clear. So we're talking about the 11th at 4 o'clock, or are we talking about the 18th at 4?
The 11th.
Okay. And that's, even though we may have, potentially have a student hearing at 4:30.
Well, she's gonna let us know. Yeah, she's
So
gonna let us
in
know.
case we do, because we won't all be back collectively together, what's the option B?
I just like, if there's some process by which to have recommendations considered, that's what I'm interested in, that how do we go about the process of, if there's some changes that we want to make, how do you get board support for those
Yeah, I'm not
changes?
arguing that one.
Oh,
I'm
no,
just
no.
saying we got two things that may potentially collide. If we do have the hearing from 4:30 to 5:30, then what's our second option? Because we won't meet again.
Let's do this. We're due to start our public hearing in just a few minutes. So Dr. Birdsong and I will get together with Ms. Tanner, and then we'll identify
Okay.
if we need to have the option B, what that option would look like for March 11th. In terms of time. In terms of time.
An hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
This isn't something that, we
Yeah.
already allotted 45 minutes today, and that wasn't enough time to hold a full discussion about concerns that we have.
Sure.
And this isn't something that we just, information is presented to us, and then we just say, yes, so it shall be. We should be able to have give and take discussion about it amongst ourselves.
And nothing is preventing you from
from
reaching out to Dr. Birdsong, and, also if there's other questions that you have.
But it's the board's budget now.
I,
Dr. Birdsong did her job.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
Yeah, she
And
proposed,
especially
and I'm
considering
good
that
with it.
this Saturday, we'll know better what the funding levels are going to look like too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. That sounds good.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then is adjourn this portion of the meeting and take a quick few-minute recess and then meet in the auditorium.
So we are starting at 7.
What time is it right now?
Do the 3 minutes, my phone's dead.
Can we do it at 7:05?
7:05, we'll start at 7:05.
Pardon?
We'll start at
Oh, yes, and they need to
7:05.
set up,
Yep.
too. So we need time. So how much time do you need, Ricky? About? He needs 15 minutes.
Well, then, it's his fault that we have to take the test.
All right.